One Nation, One Land Record, River Linking, PM Gati Shakti, Master Plan for Expressway. A digital economy poised to become 10 trillion by 2032. Are we on the right track? To understand the nitty-gritty of this budget 2022, this is the special program hosted by Bangalore branch of ICI. This is the 29th year. We are continuously doing this every year without any break. The speciality of this program is the moderators are same from last 29th year now. Our moderators are CA TV Mohandas Pai and CA Padamchand Khincha. CA TV Mohandas Pai, who is a brilliant chartered accountant, having extraordinary experience in the area of finance, accounts, information technology, human resources, education, corporate governance, social impact innovation, environmental conservation, policy formulation, heritage preservation, philanthropy, and venture and startup ecosystem. As I already said, an extraordinary personality, Mr. Pai, is currently the chairman of Aryan Capital and chairman of Manipal Global Education, and board members and advisor for several prestigious companies and institutions. Mr. Pai was awarded the Padma Shri Award by the President of India in the year 2015 and Karnataka Rajyotsava Award in the year 2008. We are really fortunate to have him here as a moderator since last 28 years. On behalf of Bangalore branch and on behalf of all the participants here, hearty welcome to Mr. Pai. Hearty welcome, sir. Our another moderator, CA Padamchand Khincha, and again a brilliant chartered accountant who has an outstanding knowledge in the area of direct tax, specialization in international taxation. A most sought after speaker, resource person across the country. He has represented large corporates in some of the high profile cases before various income tax tribunals across India and had been associated with several landmark decisions. Mr. Khincha, a prolific writer on various topics in income tax, his contribution in the area of direct tax is immense. We are really blessed to have you as a moderator of this program here since last 28 years. On behalf of Bangalore branch and on behalf of all the participants here, hearty welcome to CA Padamchand Khincha. Hearty welcome, sir. Friends, we are really fortunate to have four eminent panelists for this discussion on union budget. The first and foremost panelist is Dr. Soumya Ghosh. Is a renowned economist. Dr. Ghosh is currently Group Economist Advisor for State Bank of India. Dr. Ghosh received his PhD in economics from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Dr. Ghosh authored and co-authored several books. For successive years in 2018 and 19, Dr. Ghosh has been ranked as one of the best individuals in research in India by the Asset magazine. We are really fortunate to have him here. On behalf of Bangalore branch and on behalf of all the participants here, hearty welcome to Dr. Ghosh. Hearty welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Our other eminent panelist is Mr. Sharma, co-founder iSpirit Foundation. Mr. Sharma, having vast experience in entrepreneurial ecosystem, he is a member and advisor for several prestigious institutions like SEBI, NASSCOM, etc. He is an active technology angel investor through Let's Venture. He was given the R&D Visionary Award by Zinova in 2008. We are really blessed to have him here. On behalf of Bangalore branch and on behalf of all the participants here, hearty welcome to Mr. Sharma. Hearty welcome, sir. Our other panelist, I think, is yet to join. Is Advocate Lakshmikumaran, founder and managing partner Lakshmikumaran and Sridharan, a Tier 1 law firm having more than 400 attorneys and 14 offices across India. He has specialized in the area of direct tax and indirect taxes. He represents clients before various adjudicating authorities, tribunals, high courts, and Supreme Courts of India. He has also represented clients in other jurisdictions like European Union, USA, Australia, Canada, etc. in trade remedy cases. A busy professional. We are really lucky to have him here. He is yet to join. Please welcome him in his absence. Our next, the last and most important panelist is Dr. R. Vaidyanathan, a retired professor of finance at IIM Bangalore. Currently is a Cho Ramaswamy Chair Professor in Public Policy at Shastra University, Thanjavur, Tamil Nadu, and Emeritus Adjunct Professor of Rashtriya Raksha University, an institution of national importance at Ahmedabad. An acclaimed author, written several books on various topics. He has been conferred Life Contribution Award by Asia Pacific Risk and Insurance Association and Kaibo Life 2019. An extraordinary orator. We are really fortunate to have him here. He's going to join us shortly. On behalf of Bangalore branch, in his absence, let us welcome him too. So the people behind this program is C.A. Krishnan and his team. His team members are Mr. Mayank M., Mr. Ravi S., Mr. Shivaram, Ms. Shravani, Ms. Sweta. And our branch, my fellow colleagues in the branch committee, past chairman Ravindra Kore, vice chairman Srinivas, secretary Divya, and Panindra and other my MC members. Hearty welcome to each one of you. Hearty welcome to C.A. Krishnan. Over to Mr. Pai.
Good evening, friends.
Yes, Khincha, sir. You can please.
Yeah, Mr. Pai is joining. He's just gone for a minute out to find out the finalities of the data that we are required to present. And he has been quite involved for the last 2 days, having very specific data, very minute data in terms of presenting for the benefit of all of us here today. So he's just looking at the final print and seeing that, yes, that data will be made to the panelists also, so that we'll be able to get their valuable reactions on this aspect concern. It's a case where we are now having this budget being presented by the finance minister, carrying forward a legacy of reform that she had to do. And we are looking at what does she achieve, how does she achieve, where will she do, what will she do. We'll be therefore begin with Mr. Pai taking over now and leading us through the initial portions of what the finance minister had laid down as a plan for all of us in this budget concern.
Yeah, thank you, folks, and welcome to this.
Hearty welcome to all the delegates. Yes, over to Mr. Pai.
Yeah, thank you very much, and welcome to this 29th meeting of the budget. Can you people play the slides, please? Please play the slides, because the presentation will be played on the system, and then we can show the data and ask people the questions. Krishnan, the slide just played. Yes. Okay, let's play the slides. First slide, please. Folks, thank you very much. We got Prof. Vaidyanathan, Sharad, we got Dr. Soumya Ghosh. Please go back. And Mr. Lakshmikumaran gave it the slides. Folks, here is the data on which we start. India's population is 1.38 billion people. Our population growth rate is only 0.9%. If anybody says India's population is growing, the data is not correct. Life expectancy is around 70 years. Females have got more. Literacy has gone up. GDP this year will be $3.12 trillion. And we are growing at 9.2%. In PPP, we are $10 trillion. Per capita income is $2,266. There was some discussion sometime back when India's GDP came down, why our GDP is lesser than Bangladesh. You can see the data here. And also this year GDP is going up from 197 lakh crore to 232 lakh crore. That 35 lakh crore more, and at 75 rupees to a dollar is $466 billion increase in GDP in 1 year. Exports of goods and services 630, imports 723, high foreign exchange reserves, and our debt to GDP is quite low. But only problem is interest to gross revenue is 21.6%. I think Dr. Soumya Ghosh will answer on this when we ask him. It's 21.6% is very high, and that's the reason why, one of the reasons why our credit rating is still not going up. Next, please. Now compared with 91 to 2022, because 91 was the date, 91 was the year when we got a true economic freedom. That's the time when India liberalized. Population has grown in those years, about 31 years, from at 1.4%, and then literacy rate at 1.3. GDP growth rate has grown in current prices at 13% a year. We have grown at 13% a year in rupee terms from 1991 to 2022. Sharad, is an extraordinary growth. And GDP has grown in dollars at 8.2% a year for 31 years. Sharad, ask your people to do research. Which other country has grown at 8.2% a year for 31 years? And per capita income has grown at 6.6% because there's been population growth. And you can see the data here. Our savings rate has come back to about 30% in 2022. Next, please. Our problem has been the high level of interest payments to our tax revenues, excluding the state share. And if you see here, if you exclude the state share of revenues given by the center to the state, then it is about 43% of the net tax of the union government, net revenue union government goes to pay interest. This is very, very high, and that's why fiscal deficit should be brought down. Next.
Incremental estimate here, जो 1 lakh crore states
and here GDP growth, if you look at this,
that is borrowing.
If you look at this GDP growth, folks, please get on mute. Everybody get on mute, please. We had on the 31st of January, Msme releasing the latest estimate of GDP. 2021, GDP has declined by 6.6%, and 2022 growth has come down from 4% to 3.7%, but we're making up at 9.2%. So right now, our GDP will be slightly higher than the GDP in 2020. We are recovered fully from COVID. Next, please. And this is an interesting slide. India should be compared to China because both are large countries. And we can see we are where China was in 2002. Sharad, that is it's a bit depressing, but we have to catch up. Data has to be explained. Next. And this is an interesting slide. The world is changing. By 2030, the emerging markets with China and India will be larger than the OECD. That is 9 years away. And we will dominate the world. Though the OECD will still have savings and investment because of accumulated savings, growth will be higher in the GDP of the emerging markets. And this is remarkable. Dr. Soumya, if you see this slide, you'll see that this is a remarkable transformation happening on this decade. Just what you have been talking about and writing in your articles. Next. India and China. Well, China's population is growing only at 0.38%. I think this year or next year, China's population will start declining because they're producing only 11 million babies. We are producing 25 million babies. We have been producing 25 million babies for the last 30 years. Of course, China's literacy is higher because when Mao Zedong took over China in 1949, he said, women hold up half of heaven and educated China's women. So they become more productive, but we are not educated a woman after independence. And that's why even today, we are at 78%. And GDP, China is 14.72 on a comparative basis, growing at 5.1%. In PPP, $24 trillion. And I think this is extraordinary. They have $11,000. Can India go to $11,000? That is what all of us have to work to do. But China's debt to GDP is 270%, as against India's debt to GDP, both states and center, at 85%. Next. Sharad, this is right up your alley. 7.91 billion people on the planet, 5.31 billion people have a mobile connection, for 5 billion people are on the internet. The world has changed. COVID demonstrated that the digital revolution is upon us. Why is it important? When the industrial revolution happened 250 years ago, the world changed and Europe dominated the world for the next 250 years. When the digital revolution has come, India, China, United States will dominate the future. And Sharad Sharma and his team at High Spirit have done a tremendous amount of work to make this happen. Next. Look at India, 1.38 billion people. These numbers may be changed. 1.14 mobile connections, 658 internet, but the numbers say 850 million people have the internet and about 500 million people on social media. So India has changed, and this change is driving the economy in the future. Next. And India has benefited tremendously. If you look at some other data, 830 million people on the internet, right? 61% internet penetration. When we look at digital penetration on the world, India may come 35, 40, Sharad, but in terms of absolute numbers, no country can match us, including America. America's population only 333 million. We got 834 million on the internet. And you can see these numbers of number of minutes of consumption data. We consume about 16 to 17 GB per person. Incredibly high data. And this data shows how India has done very well in the digital world. Next. Welcome, Professor Vaidyanathan.
Thank you
now,
very
unemployment,
much.
Yes, thank you, sir. This unemployment, this is the CMI data based on a thin survey, because we don't have any other data, and the government has not worked on the Ghosh and Ghosh jobs report given 3.5 years ago. You should be happy to know, for the first time in India's history, Dr. Soumya Ghosh and Dr. Pula Ghosh created the jobs report to give to Prime Minister Modi at the request of the government, and they demonstrated large creation of jobs. But instead of building on that, the government is still keeping quiet and doing surveys. This survey shows that unemployment has been stagnant for some time in the range of 1 to 2%. Next. And this unemployment in other industries, get some more data. Next. Okay, now let us listen to the, before we go to the finance minister and listen to the video, please hang on. I want to ask questions to the panel. Please hang on. I want to ask questions to the panel. Dr. Soumya Ghosh, looking at all this data, what is your opinion on where India's economy is today? What are the prospects for your future? Just give us the overall view. Dr. Soumya, you are on mute, sir. Dr. Soumya, you are on mute. Dr. Soumya, you are on mute.
Yeah, actually, I was not allowed to unmute. So that was it.
Okay,
was
sorry.
So now, what is your question in terms of the Indian economy? What is the size?
Where is the Indian economy today? What are the prospects for the future? And have you done right so far in the last 2 years to grow in the future?
Yes. See, the size of the Indian economy as of today has crossed 3 trillion. It's actually at 3.1 trillion, if not a little more. So I think at this rate, and it has actually done a remarkable recovery from 2.6 trillion, it has jumped to 3.1 trillion. Of course, a low base was a factor, but now the single thing is that I think the problem with the Indian economy happened actually in 2018. There was this, as all of you know, in 2018 there was a change of guard at the central bank, and in 2018 also this IL&FS crisis happened. Because of the IL&FS crisis, the banking system was significantly choked. So therefore, the latest numbers which has been revised of the GDP, remarkably it shows that before the pandemic, the Indian economy has actually grown by only 3.7%. And I still remember in one of the quarters, which we were actually the first one to say that the growth could be as low as 4.2%. In fact, the growth was even lower than 4%, because that was the time when I think because of this financial market instability, because of whatever tensions between the central bank and the government in terms of an rate cut or rate hike or something, the things were not properly working out. However, after December 2018, when the current dispensation in RBI took over, it has been actually the monetary and the fiscal policy has been working very closely. I'll just take being an economist, I'll just take an example of actually the game of chickens, which we call in monetary and fiscal policy, which is basically the game of chickens says that if both of you are driving on the highway, if want to avoid collision, either both of you bump into each other, or one of you swerve right or one of you swerve left. Ultimately, what was happening is that both the monetary and the fiscal policy, for whatever reasons, was actually colliding with each other at that point of time. But after the current RBI dispensation took over, the monetary fiscal policy coordinated, we call it a coordinated equilibrium, has worked very smoothly. The central bank has able to understand that inflation has to be looked through the cycle and not at the point of cycle, because earlier what the RBI was doing is that they were only focusing on taking the inflation to 4%, which in a country like India is very difficult to hold. So instead of that, they actually tried to, and we have been writing about this also, instead what they have tried to do is that they followed the Bank of Australia mandate, whereby in the last 25 years, the Bank of Australia has never targeted the median inflation rate. It has always targeted the band, and it has been remarkably successful. So the Reserve Bank of India also followed the same mandate. It followed a band over a point of time, so it allowed the rates to come down. You brought back financial stability into the market. You hit that spreads collapsed. Then when the pandemic happens, it not only infused liquidity into the system, but basically it followed a discretionary monetary policy approach. See, this discretionary monetary policy approach is very important because this has been successfully experimented by the Fed chairman Vaidyanathan in the country, and India was one of the exceptions. And what the government did was that they actually unleashed a set of unconventional monetary policies. For example, the reverse repo was significantly cut. The repo was cut by a smaller amount. The corridor between the reverse repo was widened. So all this brought back a large amount of financial stability in the market. And the remarkably actually, if somebody is following the data today, I think the Indian economy has picked up remarkable space after the pandemic. In fact, a lot of people, everyone, of course, in fact, we are all expecting a double-digit contraction, but as of today, the contraction number which has been revised by RBI is CSO on March 31st, on January 31st when the data come out, that's been now cut to 6.6%. So imagine projections which was around -12 to -15%. Now the growth is actually at 6.6%, and a large part of that data showed that there is actually something else was happening. So here I would like to point out a very interesting findings which we actually just found out from the budget, and these data actually struck us very remarkably. Let me give you this data. I mean, this is very interesting data. Just one second. See, what has happened is that, as all of you know, during this pandemic, there was a lot of talk about the household debt has shot to unamazingly high levels. But do you know what is the actual data? I'll give you the numbers. The CSO has published a data on January 31st, 2001. The data, the story of increase in household debt during pandemic has now turned on its head. The gross financial savings of the household have increased by a massive 7.1 lakh crore, the highest ever in any financial year over the last several decades, and the total financial liabilities has only increased by 18,669 crore. So if I take both the years FY 20 and 21, the gross financial savings have actually increased by 8.5 lakh crores, and the same period financial liabilities increased by only 34,000 crore. So where is the question of an increase in household debt? It's very difficult to understand from this data. We don't have the FY 22 data, but even if I assume that in FY 22 there has been an increase in a little bit of debt, but I think still that number is manageable. And other estimates which I'll tell is that the household debt has increased sharply to 37.3% in 2020-21. Now this number has declined sharply to 34% as per our latest estimates. And India, and we have written in the budget document, I think a copy of that has already been sent out today morning. Our household debt to GDP ratio is at 35.8%. We are almost at the lowest 10. Only South Africa is below at 35.8. All other countries are above us. China is actually at 61.2, Switzerland at 130.8, and United States at 79. So all countries are all South India, Thailand, Malaysia, Japan, all these countries are in 60 to 75% range. So the point which I'm trying to say is that if this, yes, there has been distress, nobody is denying that. There was loss of income, there was loss of jobs, but I think and the other behavioral, so this was one behavioral shift in the habit which actually held us in good state, because you can look into the stock market movements. You know what is the other behavioral habit? When you look into the private final consumption expenditure of each of the items, I find that the dramatic people were locked up at home, and this actually has impacted the individual consumption pattern to such an extent that consumption on food and non-alcoholic drinks increased by a massive 3.5 lakh crores in FY20, because people are not spending on services. Spending on all categories of transport, clothing, restaurants declined by 6.1 lakh crores. So people are stuck up at home, people are consuming foods, and on a lighter note, maybe the obesity problem may be actually turning a little bit for the worse, but people are consuming a lot of food and other things, and that is the result. And because of the supply side bottlenecks, that is one of the reasons that why the inflation has held on, because initially there was a supply side bottleneck, so inflation went up, but after that the supply side, the government has managed the supply and distribution of food very well. So therefore inflation has been very nicely behaved and during the pandemic, and our expectations is that inflation will continue to behave nicely in the next year or so, notwithstanding the other government figures. So I will come back to the other stories later on after the other speakers say, but to cut the long story short, I think this year the projections of growth rate is at 9.2%. Unfortunately, our projections were a little higher at 9.3 to 9.6%, but because of Omicron, what has happened, and large part of the growth of these last 3 months will be shifted to next year. Next year, growth rate is projected at 8% by the government, 8 to 8.5%. We are at 8%, but with a nominal GDP of 11.1%, which is a significant underestimate, which the government has said. I think if the nominal GDP numbers could be anywhere between 13%, in that case, the government will be able to spend even more, because if the GDP goes up, the expenditure numbers, the GDP percentage of GDP will remain constant. Even then, absolute terms, they may increase. So this actually will mean that the growth will come back very strongly to the system, and the impetus which the government has given on the infrastructural investment from 6 lakh crores to 7.5 lakh crores. And the best thing in the budget is that a large part of the expenditures which was off balance sheet, like NHA, National Highway Authority of India, and other estimates, all of this has now been brought into the expenditure, and banks actually will be very pleased to extend loans to the infrastructure sector. So all in all, I think hopefully we have reached the end of we have now entered into endemic, and because of the shift in the behavioral habits which I just explained, some of the earlier hypothesis doesn't hold true of an enormous rise in the household leverage. Yes, there has been problems, but not to the extent which people have said, because I'm just showing that data, nothing else. So if I go by this, I think next year could be very good for us, and if that is the case, then that could take care of a lot of the problems and the narratives which has been going around in the last 2 years in terms of the pandemic. Because please note that India will be the fastest growing economy next year, and the contraction is now significantly lower than what it was estimated earlier. And the GDP numbers that the government has given out at 258 lakh crores, that is also an underestimate. Our sense is that number could be as much as around 5 to 6 lakh crores higher. And every 2 lakh crores adds is 1% of GDP. So 2 to 3% of GDP could be then potential upside from which the government is actually given out the figures. I would like to end here, and I will then we can then take on the other things as time progresses.
Wow, that is very remarkable. Thank you very much. Professor Vaidyanathan, if you can hear us, I would like your views. Do you share the optimism of Dr. Soumya Ghosh, and do you feel that we are on the right growth path now for high growth this year and the next year, and the paying cost for the pandemic is behind us? Professor Vaidyanathan?
Yeah, I can hear you. I am not able to have my video seen. I do not know why.
Okay.
Could I have
I
your voice
think
at least?
Yeah.
you have censored me.
Folks, have a look whether the problem is with what Dr. Vaidyanathan is doing or problem with the back end. Yeah, go ahead, Professor. Talk to us.
Yes, sir. 1 minute, our technical team will attending, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Professor Vaidyanathan, go on. Please talk to us.
But one or two quick observation. There is a, as usual, last I think you have seen it for 10 years. If you are
Yes.
pro-government, you say, oh, there is nothing like this. This budget has been revolutionary, all these things. And if you are not inclined towards the government, oh, nothing they have done, it's all futile. And again, let me repeat it. This I have been repeating, Mohan, you know that for the last, I don't know, 15 years. There is no need for this whole budget secretive halwa making exercise at all now. You can provide the alternatives and have a debate or discussion on that. And after a couple of, particularly after the GST, what is the big deal about it? You provide all the possible alternative scenario to the public at large. And anyhow, 75% of the people do not understand anything about the budget, but they just go on churning it. There is no need, according to me, let me repeat it, to have this whole tamasha and make it a tension and TRP. We only announced the budget will provide you, and we are the first channel to say that budget is going to be announced, and all this, this is anyhow. That's the first point I would like to mention. Second is about this situation is not very good. Let's be very clear about it. And it's also contributed by the Wuhan virus, which is having all its various avatars, to 1.0, 2.0, and every time periodically journalists are telling it is going to end, and we are waiting, hopefully. And you are telling about assessing the economy. There are three ways to assess. I think I have mentioned it several times. One is regarding vis-a-vis the past. Second is vis-a-vis the expectation. Third is vis-a-vis other countries. Vis-a-vis our past, obviously it is very difficult to assess because of this last 2 years of this difficulty. Vis-a-vis our expectation, definitely we have not achieved, partly due to the pandemic. And vis-a-vis the other countries, it all depends whom you choose. Burkina Faso or Mali or those countries you choose, we have done phenomenally well. And comparatively other countries, we have not done so well. Another thing, this is the picture. And 2 or 3 quick observation. Our total budget 21-22 was 37.7 lakh crore. Like our total budget in 21-20, 37.7 lakh crore. In 22-23, it is 39.44 lakh crore. That is 38 crore to 40 crore. And an increase of something like less than 5%. And if I remember my numbers correctly, this is the lowest in the last 18 years in terms of the aggregate. Then revenue picture is not very. 20.78 lakh crore was 21-22, and 22-23 it is 22.04. It's something like hardly of the order of 15%. Again, least in the last 10 years. So of the revenue, our major thing comes from petroleum product, which is was 3.94 lakh crore, and now it is 3.35 lakh crore. And if you add all the dividend and the various other taxes of the petroleum companies, it will be roughly of the order of 5 lakh crore. So my concern is we are becoming a single product economy in terms of tax revenue of the government. This is one thing. The Middle East is having major problem because they became a single product economy. We also should not fall into the trap. By and large, and there is nothing, many of the others are See, defense is 3.7 lakh crore to 3.8 lakh crore, and so there is not much of a huge difference or anything. By and large, our society has coped well with the crisis. Let's be very clear about not the government. Our society, again, let me repeat, Mohan, our society is organized. Government is, in the case of Western countries, government is organized, society is disorganized. There is a fundamental difference. And our society is organized very simple. Huge number of people stood in the queue to return back to their villages. My French colleague told, in our country, people have burnt all the buses. People would not have gone just, politely another thing. Our belief in the law of karma, rebirth, all these things help. So let's be very clear about it. Anyhow, so our society has coped with this crisis very well, actually. How long it will be able to sustain, we have to see. And one data Dr. Ghosh also told about the saving rate. You look at the saving rate of many of the European countries, you will be shocked actually. Many of the G7 countries were single rate actually, household saving rate I am talking about, 2%, 3% like that. Last year figures are unbelievable actually, 14, 15, 16%. Never achieved in any of the European countries that level of household saving, because the discretionary spending is not there simply. People are not able to go out, people are not able to visit restaurant, buy their clothing, and by and large, three items are only they are spending: food, associated thing along with the food, and medicine. These are the only thing which they are spending at home. So the saving rate aggregate is around 30%. As usual, 20% is that of the Indian households, and most of Indian household saving spending is in food, what one can call egg, vegetables, and these are the items. Because we are on the left side of the Engels curve, roughly 55% of our income we spend only on food and related items, unlike Western European countries where it is around 15 to 16% only. So we cannot be very comfortable that we are out of the crisis or anything like that. We are not. We are still very much in the midst of the problem, and one doesn't know how long this Wuhan is going to carry on with us. And employment has been a very, very major source of tension and friction, and common people have been significantly affected. There is no two opinion about it. You don't have to look at the statistics and other things. And there is a huge amount of erosion in the income of good amount of lower category of people. It is picking up, hopefully. And if the I don't know whether to believe the television host or journalist or doctors, or that in 2022 all this is over, and another group says if what is that called, that Bill Gates is arrested, everything will be okay, another thing. Anyhow, one doesn't know. This whole thing is in a confused state of flux. One only hopes that by 22-23 we are able to come out of this difficulty and reach some amount of moderate level of growth. 2 points, quick observation. In this budget also, we have not come up. Suddenly we introduced this gross value added. When all over the world people use GDP, we get these fancy ideas, fancy notion, depending upon who is the chief economic advisor, introduce one more term, gross value added, everybody, and it is very difficult to compare globally. That is one. Second point is there was a move to shift our financial year in alignment with the global practices. January 1 to, I do not know what exactly has happened, whether we are by itself it will shift, because in India most of the thing happen by itself. It is not due to any effort. Suddenly you will find the chartered accountants will declare that January 1 is our financial year, and assessment previous year, because mostly CAs have to decide which is previous year, next year, assessment year, calendar year, and this Tarpan year, and all that. So I do not know what has happened to that actually. Many are, but the allocations in the budget, many of the people are highly appreciative that, we are futuristic, we are the next 15 years. Some people are talking in terms of 100 years of India's freedom. We are going to, day after tomorrow, we are problem in terms of having the employment and having some amount of income. So we are becoming very, very futuristic. So this is something which is interesting actually. And of course, I'm sure in the course of the discussion, you will have crypto is what is the thing and what RBI is going to do with crypto. And also these banks are getting, the postal system is integrated into bank is an interesting thing. Except in Manmohan Singh time itself, it was announced that, there will be a core banking of activities by the postal system. Anyhow, it will come, I think. After that, money lenders also may be covered. I'm very sure into the core of the core. So we will have to, wait and see. Some of these announcements are very, very interesting. Actually, it it gives you a lot of, a good, feel. What is it called? Feel good factor. That is very, very important these days. So I belong to a very old school where we never feel any good for any factors for that matter. So it's all right. And we will hope that the economy is on track and able to meet some of the objectives. And as I told you, it will grow not due to government. It is in spite of the government. Let's be very clear. The last important point I want to mention is everybody talking about central government doing this. Nobody is looking at the chaos at the state government. Ease of doing business is not at Delhi. It is not at Vigyan Bhavan. It's at the local level. Even today in the southern part of the country, I know a trade license costing 6,000 to 7,000 rupees. You have to pay 1 lakh as bribe. Rupees 1 lakh as bribe. You don't have to pay. I think all of you know there are lawyers and chartered accountants who are facilitators in the growth process. So the state level, it is chaos. Corporation level, it is absolute chaos, actually. Very recently, I think you would have read again, one more person died in a pothole in Bangalore, right? Number of people dying in pothole is becoming our indicator of our, what one can call global Silicon Valley. This is what is the, and these roads, these contractors, these corporators, these bureaucrats, they are all children. Or one person told, sir, this road, Bannerghatta road is my God. I asked him, what is this road you are telling God? Sir, but for that my daughter cannot be studying law in Yale, paying full fee. So this is the type of, so we must focus on state level, corporation level. No point in going on telling about allocation at Delhi or something. I think this, the need of the hour is to look at this very, very seriously. Thank you. We'll come back again in the next round.
Yeah, Sharad, you have spent the last 10 years building digital infrastructure for India. I think what you have done is unbelievable. Now, you saw during the COVID when everything was locked down, how they came to the rescue of the people. Talk to us and tell us how the digital revolution has impacted India and what you hope to see in the next 3 to 4 years and how India has changed forever because of all the work done in this area.
You mentioned some time back that we have about 25 million babies born every year. So our vaccination program, in about 31,000 vaccination centers was geared to vaccinate those 25 million babies every year, right? Now, we did not add very many more vaccination centers. In fact, it's varied between 31 to 40,000 vaccination centers. But think of it, there is hardly a week that goes by that the same 31,000 vaccination centers vaccinate 25 million people in a week. In fact, there's been 2 days where we vaccinated 25 million people in one day. Now, this is an unlocking of productivity which is unbelievable. And this has been possible because the plumbing for healthcare has started changing because of the health stack. And what is that plumbing? Plumbing is that the flow of people, flow of information, flow of money can be reimagined. So now, you have an hourly count of how many people have been vaccinated, but we still don't have, we have 3-year-old data, 2-year-old data on how many children were vaccinated. This is the flow of information that has improved. The flow of individuals has become simplified because you just give your Aadhaar number, yeah, and you know what is happening. You can sign up anywhere. And many of these private vaccination centers are not complaining because they actually are getting paid for the vaccinations that they are providing for free very often. So therefore, I think there is an unlocking of productivity. We were a leaky bucket for government services. That is changing. It is changing in ways that we often do not appreciate today. And I will only indicate to you that one more big change is coming. That big change is called e-rupee, that was launched on 2nd August of last year. The first transaction will go live in February, likely in Chandigarh. And this is a system which is person and purpose dependent vouchers. Now they have, of course, applicability in the private sector, but clearly they are going to be deployed in health. So I'll give you an example. Today, when a baby is born and it's underweight, then the mother is supposed to get protein biscuits under the Poshan Abhiyan. So as Professor Vaidyanathan said, you can guess how many states does the mother actually get the protein biscuits. In other cases, it's only registered. The register says she got it, but she actually never got to see the protein biscuits. Now, in this situation, what the government is going to do is to give her a voucher, and she's going to be able to obtain that protein biscuit from any pharmacy that she likes. Now, she may still not take it, she may still not eat it, that is possible, but the onus shifts to her, not to the delivery system. So a major supply reform is going to unleash itself in the next 3 years within the government system. And the conservative estimates are that perhaps even 30 to 40% of the DBT money may move on to this new system as we go forward. Now, I'm happy to say many banks have organized themselves to embrace this, which includes Dr. Soumya Ghosh's bank as well, because nothing in India can happen until SBI is part of it. But clearly, HDFC, ICICI are already out of the gate and are doing this on the ground. So there is one reform that is coming. Second, we don't have to go far to see how digitization has gone deeper in the Bharat market. And I'm not talking about Swiggy and Zomato. I'm talking about people being able to use financial services in a digital fashion that they were not able to use. Keep in mind, today UPI transactions exceed by both volume and value the ATM transactions that we have. Look at what has happened in the stock market. I mean, you can pick anybody that you like, but the best example of this is Zerodha. More than doubled its user base, and most of it is in Bharat markets, not in the metros, in smaller cities that have happened. So we know there has been an embrace of digitization for financial services. We know it has happened for health services, at least vaccination. This is undoubtedly the case. And now the third leg that is going to happen is going to be to do with logistics. So the third thing that I want to point out, which is a shift which is the hardest to see, this is a weak signal that I want to amplify here, is that, look, if you are going to go from 2,000 something per capita to 6,000, the structure of the economy has to change. And that structure of the economy cannot be the same agri economy and a services economy that we have had. We have to overlay on top of that a new kind of a layer, innings for ourselves, where we are really a low-cost Germany and a low-cost Switzerland, not a low-cost China. Low-cost China is low quality, low cost. And Mohan, you've been part of this revolution, which accounts for probably one of the largest export sectors of the country, is that the IT services was low cost but high quality. And we have to occupy the same quadrant in a number of areas. And I think we are beginning to do that. Very early signal. We are beginning to do that in defense. We are certainly doing that in software products. We are beginning to do that in some parts of electronics and some of these new sunrise sectors that are there. And if this catches momentum, I think that will be the biggest kind of a revolution that we will see in the next 4 or 5 years as we go forward. So I am very optimistic about where we are today. And I think there are big changes afoot. They may not be reflected in all the numbers, that macroeconomic numbers yet, but unless you look at them very carefully, for example, why are our exports rising, but they are there, and I think they will begin to show up in the numbers as we go forward. So we should be optimistic, cautiously optimistic about the future.
Thank you, Sharad. That's very revealing. Now let's go to the finance minister and see what is the vision in the budget.
I'm sorry, say that again.
No. We are going over to the finance minister to see the video of the finance minister to see what is her vision in the budget, what she do in the budget. Yes, folks, please play the video.
On Khincha, we are marking Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and have entered into Amrit Kaal, the 25-year-long lead up to India at 100. Honorable President Day address had set out the vision for India at 100. By achieving certain goals during Amrit Kaal, our government aims to attain this vision.
What is coming?
Complementing the macroeconomic level growth focus with microeconomic level all-inclusive welfare focus. Promoting digital economy and fintech, technology-enabled development, energy transition, and climate action, and relying on virtuous cycle starting from private investment with public capital investment, helping to crowd in private investment. Since 2014, our government's focus has been on empowerment of citizens, especially the poor and the marginalized. Measures have included programs that have provided housing, electricity, gas, and access to water. We also have programs for ensuring financial inclusion and direct benefit transfers. We are committed to strengthening the abilities of the poor to tap all opportunities. Our government constantly strives to provide the necessary ecosystem for the middle classes, a vast and wide section which is populated across various middle income brackets, to make use of the opportunities they so desire.
We're going to ask questions now about what is the focus of the budget. If you look at the slides again, yes, please play the slides. Entering the Amrit Kaal. Amrit Kaal is what the government is talking about. A blueprint to India till 100. We don't know what's going to happen after 2 years. Fundamental tenets include transparency of financial statements, but the budget will become more transparent. Health system has been strengthened. Speedy implementation of vaccination, like Sharad said. The PLI schemes. Next slide, please. Now, here is a quick question to all the three people. Just give a quick question in a couple of minutes. Next slide, please. Is the government doing enough to prepare us for the future? Are we solving the fundamental structural issues in the economy? Are we doing enough to create adequate jobs for our youth? This is a very big question. I'll start with Professor Vaidyanathan. Very short answers to all three of them. Yes, Professor. Professor Vaidyanathan.
Mohan, I'm not being cynical, but let me tell you my past experience. In 2010-11, most companies were gung-ho about Vision 2020. That used to be the most common thing. Around 2008 to 2010, every company I have interacted, they had a Vision 2020. I was wondering why this Vision 2020. One chairman of an IT company, I don't want to name him, he had a sense of humor. He told, Professor, anyhow, I am retiring around 2015-16. And our vision document should end at a time after I leave the organization. This is most important. After that, I will become what I call war veteran. Wisdom after retirement. I know I can write articles in center page in newspaper. what should have been done, another thing. So this, I'm very, I'm not against futuristic planning and other thing, but I think looking for something like 100 years ahead and total 100 years, sorry, not 100 years itself. And government doing enough to prepare, I'm not very sure. I think they should answer this. We are not solving fundamental structural issues in the economy. It is getting solved by itself. I'm telling you, the global corporations are going to be the major activist in our economy. They are going to solve this, not our government or any of these things. If you see the noise, people are talking about Ambani and Adani. Have you ever noted any noise against Amazon and Microsoft? Sovereign state is getting dissolved globally. Let's be very clear about it. We are only using 19th century discussion on socialism, capitalism, public sector, private sector, which is all gone in 20th century. 21st century still, because we cannot identify or create new debates. Same debates we are continuing. Sovereign states are getting dissolved. Global corporations are taking over. And not us, even G7 and others are concerned about it. They are trying to introduce this 15% minimal tax and other thing. Nobody is going to care. 50% of the global GDP of 100 trillion is in tax havens. 50%, not my estimate. This is the global estimate by IMF, OECD and others. None of these companies care about your sovereign nature of the state. So fundamental structural issues in the economy will be sorted out by itself. Large portion of agriculture is under contract farming. Not many are even knowing about it or discussing about it. Actually, not only agriculture, it is allied in terms of egg, poultry and various other floriculture. All are under contract economy of the corporates. Are we creating enough job to adequate job to our youth? Again, let me repeat, hopefully government doesn't create job for the youth. If government create jobs, it will be chaotic. By definition, government cannot create jobs. It can only increase the number of jobs. That's all it will do. So the society has to create more jobs, and I'm sure it will be taking. The only thing government has to come out of the back of the people. Two areas. One, health, Sharma already mentioned about it. More important is education. I think they should get out of this education. Allow people to study whatever they want and whatever language they want, whatever subject they want, and that would provide adequate amount of jobs to the youngsters. Not directing them to do BA economics, sociology, social science, and all this. I think. So, are we doing enough? We as a society definitely doing enough. But as long as government doesn't get involved in this, things will be very. If you start with an assumption, Mohan, that the government is there to solve your problem, those 7 words are the most pernicious words that was told by Reagan long time before. This is what will be my. So the problems of us will be solved by global corporations. Period. Full stop.
Thanks, Doc. That's very radical. Soumya, what is your view? Overall view now on the finance minister's speech? Is she doing enough?
I think I will just answer the 3 questions. I think there is both an yes and no to point number 1 and point number 2. Yes, the government is doing I'll not say enough to prepare us for the future. I think here the concept of the next 25 years is important, even though I think to some of us it might look a little more futuristic, given the fact that the problem lies today, and future no one knows, future what is uncertain. But I think this actually tries to by looking at the future, the government is actually trying to portray, trying to create the atmosphere of what should be the reforms for the maybe for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line. In my sense, I think what is important and what the government is trying to put forward is banking. I am calling from a banking perspective, banking as a service model. So basically completely digitalized. You lend online to MSME, you lend online to agriculture, green bonds. So completely banking 4 model, and that being combined with an industry 4 model. Basically, we have gone to industry 1 model, industry 2 model, industry 3 model. Now basically you have the industry 4th industrial revolution, which is basically nothing but green hydrogen and EV, carbon neutral fuels. So it is this combination of this 4th industrial revolution and banking as a service model which will drive the Indian economy in the next 2 decades or so. But having said that, my certain points is that I'm a little bit disappointed because there's a lot of reforms which the government can do, but they are not being able, maybe they are not being done because of they're very politically sensitive. Agriculture sector is the most obvious example which comes to my mind. I mean, we need immediate price discovery in the agricultural sector. I mean, the amount of disparity which is across the country in terms of some of the states and the other states is a matter of serious concern, and that's why that has stunted our gross value added. Do you know that our gross value added in agricultural sector is around 35 lakh crores, out of which crops is 20 lakh crores and the rest is allied activities, and the outstanding bank credit is around 13 lakh crores. So that means there is an opportunity of 20 lakh crores in the agricultural value chain which we are unable to utilize because we have not been able to reform the agricultural sector. So I think here the government needs to do, and also on the banking sector, I think the time has now come to, the government has moved to 12 public sector banks. Now the time has come to give more freedom to the public sector banks. Unfortunately, the bill which was supposed to be passed this year in terms of privatizing 2 banks has not come through. So that's a matter of also serious concern, because at the end of the day, you need to give both the public sector banks and the private sector banks equal space. Finally, on the job side, yes, job is an issue, but let me tell you one thing over here. We actually wrote it also, but the PLI scheme the government has introduced, and I was comparing the PLI scheme the government has introduced across the sectors from whereby you import from China. I will give you a number over here. If suppose we are supposed to stop, the PLI was supposed to stop the imports from China, that number is as much as US 40 billion. So which is basically nothing but around 15 lakh crores would be the addition to India's GDP if the PLI was able to successfully eliminate all the imports from China. This year, you know, the exports to China has remarkably jumped because India also has been doing very well in terms of the exports. So I think, yes, the government is doing well, but it needs to grow more in sectors which are politically sensitive. I'm afraid that with elections around the corner next year, it may not be that the government may miss the bus again in terms of reforming the sectors like agriculture and others.
Is the government doing enough to prepare us? You see the 3 questions. Yes, your views.
Yeah. I think first is, of course, as Dr. Ghosh talked about, factor markets need much more reform, right? And I think there is absolutely potential to do more. But I want to keep making an argument that even more fundamental change in the Indian economy is needed as we go forward, because the structure of the economy has to change over time. We are at the cusp, whether we are in 1974, where Thailand's per capita was more than Korea. We have a choice of becoming a Thailand of today or a Korea of today. And we are at that cusp in 1974 that Thailand and Korea was. And Korea took a decision at that time saying that they will focus on some new sectors that are going to be very vital for them. And today, all our audience cannot name a single Thai product brand, but obviously we can all name many Korean brands, and they exist today. This is the fork in the road that we have. This fork has to become more explicit as we have to go forward. Otherwise, we will not rise to our potential as we go. Now, the important part is that what does it need, and what does it mean for jobs? And what does it need? It needs a new innovation model. to build an innovation ecosystem like Infosys and Indigo, that is very different than the one that you will have for Boeing or Airbus or Juniper and Cisco. It's a very different innovation ecosystem. That, believe it or not, that innovation system requires public research, public platforms, and private innovation. So I am happy to say that some of that is beginning to come. There is little or no doubt. The opening of the speech suggests this. There are references, and we had one person, his name is Balaji Srinivasan. Many of you may know him, Balaji S. He says he's never ever heard any finance minister or central banker use the word open APIs in their budget. So there is an awareness that is beginning to come in. And why are open APIs important? Because without a government bureaucrat sitting here, people can innovate on top of the public infrastructure that has been created. So these are, there is glimmer of hope that we are moving in the right direction. We must move faster. On the jobs, we need, there's some wonderful work done by, as you said, Ghosh and Ghosh committee, but we need to also focus on figuring out how to rebalance the economy. We have the largest gap between factory price to the street price. And as more digitization happens, that will go away. If $100 billion, and why will it go away? Because 10 years ago, when I bought a phone, 18% of this remained as local sales, marketing, and distribution. Today, that is 1.8%. So in the past, 18 rupees stayed in India and 88 rupees went outside. Today, 98 rupees go out. Only 2 rupees stay in India because everything is bought digitally. Everybody buys a phone digitally. That's only 1.8%. So therefore, that shift that you have, 16% of local value addition, which was there as a consuming economy, will not be there for solar cells, for even porcelain pots, sinks, anything that is being imported from outside, because that local value addition will go away. And today, a lot of our jobs are, $3,000 per capita jobs are in sales, marketing, and distribution. So if $100 billion goes away, 18% is eaten away because of efficiency, productivity. This means that you lose 6 million jobs for every $100 billion of digital commerce happening in India that was happening in physical commerce before. So where do those 6 million people go? They have to go on the producing side of the economy. But what is that producing side of the economy? That is what we must focus on. And if you don't do that, when you combine that with emerging productivity improvements in sales and marketing and the shrinkage of employment on agriculture, we do have a very big jobs crisis, and we need more thinking to figure out where the new jobs will come from. And that's something that we are not doing enough of at this point.
Thank you. That's very somber. So let's go to video number 2. Padam.
Yeah, this is an interesting observation by Dr. Soumya Ghosh and Sharad. Soumya Ghosh was talking about...
Video number 2, please. Yeah, go on. Go on.
In the video coming up.
2021-22 has provided a sharp increase in provision for public investment or capital expenditure. Throughout the year, with the Honorable Prime Minister guiding the implementation, our economic recovery is continuing to benefit from the multiplier effect. This budget continues to provide impetus for growth. It lays a parallel track of 1, a blueprint for the Amrit Kal, which is futuristic and inclusive. This will directly benefit our youth, women, farmers, the scheduled castes, and the scheduled tribes. And number 2, big private public investment. Number 2, big public investment for modern infrastructure, ready for India and this shall be guided by PM Gati Shakti and benefited by the synergy of multimodal approach. Moving forward,
please go on mute. Yeah, Finance Minister.
No, about it.
Yeah, Finance Minister, please go on. We're not stopping you.
No, they should come. Not coming.
Financing of investments.
No, this is third. We'll go into the aspect of what the finance minister has laid down. The precursor to this was laid out by Soumya Ghosh. And,
next slide.
Yeah, next slide. And Sharad. Soumya Ghosh talking about agriculture and price discovery, reforms in the banking sector. Sharad was talking about the change in the aspect of the economy, constitutes of the economy from sales and marketing to the production side. And the finance minister is talking about public investment and capital expenditure. This is a question to Soumya Ghosh. Talking about public investment and capital expenditure, talking about 4 priorities now in the current budget. PM Gati Shakti is first, inclusive development is second, productivity enhancement and investments, sunrise opportunities is third, fourth is financing of investments. And for this purpose, the finance minister in the speech spoke about 7 engines that will help us in helping achieve these objectives concerned. If you were to go into the last year's budget, the finance minister made a mention that there are 6 prominent themes that I am building the budget on. He spoke about health and well-being. He spoke about physical and capital in financial capital and infrastructure. He spoke about inclusive development, reinvigorating human capital, innovation and R&D, minimum government and maximum governance. 6 themes last year, 4 themes this year. And the question therefore to Soumya Ghosh is that in the light of what we're discussing, in the light of the discussion we've had now, do these set priorities reflect what we actually need? And are we investing adequately to meet these objectives and priorities?
See, I think this is again a very important point. In terms of the capital expenditure which the government has given out in the budget, I'll just put you some numbers over here. I think this year the capital expenditure is estimated to be around 7.5 lakh crores. The incremental increase in expenditure is 1.5 lakh crores. So that is basically a huge jump from last year estimates, revised estimates of 6 lakh crores, assuming that the government is able to spend the 6 lakh crores in the current fiscal. Now, the important point is that a part of this capital expenditure, actually, it has been the secretary, the expenditure secretary has bought out the extra, for example, the extra budgetary resources for the National Highway, National Highway Authority of India, Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, Prime Minister Awas Abhijan, and Krishi Unnati Yojana. So he has given a lot of focus on the rural infrastructure and rural infrastructure, which will basically drive the capital expenditure. So I think a lot of people have missed out this point, because yes, the allocation of the Nariga, which was last year more than 1 lakh crore, has been slashed by around 24%, 72,000 crore. Though the expenditure secretary has clearly said that if the need arises, we will increase that, and that also of the Agricultural Ministry of Rural Development allocation has remained almost the same, increased by 4%. But people are forgetting the fact that this increase in capital expenditure in the rural areas through the National Highway Authority of India, which is basically the construction of roads, Gram Sadak Yojana, Awas Yojana, Krishi Unnati Yojana, these all actually will drive the rural infrastructure to a significant extent. The other important thing, however, over here is actually the point to note is that the how this money will be financed. The problem is that basically the pandemic has created a lot of uncertainty in the markets, and the private investment now has to come in to supplement the capital investment. If I just look at the total NIP expenditure, National Infrastructure Program, 111 lakh crores in FY20, and the center's expenditure is around 39%, which means that the center could actually have to do the budgetary estimates of around, I think, at least 7 lakh crores every year. So there is a gap between the NIP investment and center's actual capex, which is not a small amount. So this is basically the problem. So until and unless the private sector comes up and fills the gap, it will be different. Hopefully the private sector will come up, because all the conditions for a private sector investment revival are in place. Deleveraging has been done, rate of interest is lower, rating upgrades have happened, the PLI schemes has been unveiled. So everything has been done. So there is nothing left to the imagination why the investment cycle will not kickstart. And if that happens, I think the private investment will be able to push the investment. The other thing is that the government has unveiled a national infrastructural pipeline, monetization pipeline, PLI incentives. Even if we are assuming that the debt equity ratio of 70:30, the banks actually has an opportunity of around 37 lakh crores during the next 3 to 4 years of funding these plans, and already the banks are doing that, because already we are getting feelers that in terms of financing the national infrastructure and other things. So I think yes, it's going to be a little bit challenging, but if the corporates deleveraging and other things have been completed to the extent which we anticipated, I think the stage is now possibly set for an investment revival.
Yeah, we'll move on to the other pet program, PM Gati Shakti, and look into the video of the finance minister on this. And then the question will be to Professor Vaidyanathan on this aspect.
The approach is driven by 7 engines, namely roads, railways, airports, ports, mass transport, waterways, and logistics infrastructure. All 7 engines will pull forward the economy in unison. These engines are supported by the complementary roles of energy transmission, IT communication, bulk water and sewerage, and social infrastructure. Finally, the approach is powered by clean energy and Sabka Prayas, the efforts of the central government, the state governments, and the private sector together, leading to a huge job and entrepreneurial opportunities for all, especially the youth.
The finance minister laid down the roadmap for India at 100, and she made a statement that Gati Shakti is going to be extremely important in terms of achieving that very ambitious program, ensuring that yes, the spurt in the infrastructure is going to drive growth, will also help us in employment, help also in the entire economy recovering and performing to its full potential. Now look at the infrastructure investment. Look at the way India is investing as a percentage of its GDP, and look at where China is doing it. The lighter blue is what is the estimated need, and the darker blue is the actual spending, historical spending. Look at China. Estimated need was 6.4%, but it's spending 8.5% of its GDP on infrastructure, far in excess of the needs concerned. Look at India. Estimated need is 6.9%, but we're only spending 4.7%. Question therefore is that in terms of the need, India is still far short, despite its promises, despite making good announcements concerned. In terms of actual expenditure, our needs are much higher. The question therefore is, look at what the next slide, please. Next slide. Gati Shakti broad highlights are that there are 7 engines for economic transformation. This will help us in multimodal connectivity and logistical efficiency. We'll have therefore world-class modern infrastructure and logistics synergy among different modes of movement. National highways, 25,000 kilometers in the next year. Seamless multimodal movement of goods and people. Railways to develop new products. There will be no new 400 Vande Bharat trains. 100 cargo terminals for multimodal logistics. Therefore, they're trying to make a situation where for movement of goods, services, and people, intermodal dependency between roads, railways, and airports is going to be a priority. Question therefore to Professor Vaidyanathan is, will the questions next would be 2 questions there. Next slide. Will the PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan help to raise productivity and accelerate economic growth and development? And are we investing adequately? Professor Vaidyanathan.
Yeah, immediately one point I want to mention, you are showing China and India in percentage term. Kindly note they are 18 trillion. We are now touching 3 trillion. So just, there is, I do not know, it's like elephant and, chua, you are trying to compare in percentage term. Even there, we find that compared to what we need and what we have actually investing, there is a significant gap. Right now, 2 aspects are important. It's not the outlay which is very critical. Outlays are always talked about. In many a time, I would like to point out, not even 60 to 70% of the outlay has been finally achieved. This is something, CAG report, you have to wait actually. There is and even in this time outlay, everybody is talking about, Gram Sadak Yojana and other. You'll be interested to know, rural road in 21-22, 65,680 crores was allotted. And 22-23, it is 64,568. Not that, according to me, it's not very critical, because again, some 50 to 60% only may be achieved. That is one. And will the Gati Shakti National Master Plan? Definitely it will help. But one important point is, we, the elephant in the room, we don't want to talk about, because we are all gentlemen, perfect gentlemen without tie. That's the only thing. I find even Mohan and our friend is not having tie, because I am very puzzled actually, because normally chartered accountant always have a tie, because it is told that in India you can tell a lie, only with a tie, otherwise it will not be true. Anyhow, most important, nobody wants to talk about is the leakage in these schemes. This is something which is, my estimate is anywhere between 15 to 20% leakage take place. So that is the fundamental issue which nobody wants to, we say that 10,000 crore, 12 lakh crore and all these thing is there. But the level of corruption, nobody wants to talk about, because we are all gentlemen. That's one thing. And most of us have a day-to-day interaction with the government. So we can't talk about corruption today and then, tomorrow go and meet the ITO and have discussion. He will say, NSR, yesterday in the panel you blasted me like. So we don't want to. So this is something we are investing adequately, definitely. But are we getting the benefit of the buck for the type of investment which we are doing? That is, I think, is the important question. The lesser and lesser we reduced the level of leakage in this project, the better it will be for the organization. This is very, very critical and important.
Thanks, Doc. That's interesting. So we'll go faster now. Next slide, please. This is on agriculture. And we'll ask Soumya Ghosh to answer this, because we got good data. Yes, the speech, please.
Second priority, agriculture. The procurement of wheat in Rabi 21-22 and the estimated procurement of paddy in Kharif 21-22 will cover 1,208 lakh metric tons of wheat and paddy from 163 lakh farmers, and 2.37 lakh crores will be the direct payment of MSP value. Chemical-free natural farming will be promoted throughout the country with a focus on farmers, 5-kilometer wide corridors along the river Ganga at the first stage.
Folks, let us look at some interesting data. I think Dr. Soumya Ghosh can enlighten. Look at this table very carefully. Crop is largely cereals. They've grown only at 6.3% CAGR in growth at market value from 2011-12 till 18-19. Fruits and vegetables, condiments, livestock, forestry, even forestry which is small, fishing and agriculture has grown at 17.6%. So the entire GVA on the agriculture side has grown at 10% a year since then, Soumya, and that is because of high prices too. Farmers' income could have doubled. I don't know, maybe you are better for that. But the interesting point is, crops have only 42.9% in 11-12, have come down to 33.8 in 18-19. And today they could be only 30%. That means the importance of crops. So Dr. Soumya, why are we giving so much attention to the farmers of Punjab and Haryana who are growing more wheat and rice and not doing anything else which is growing faster and which is becoming a greater part of our consumption package? Now look at the next data, next slide. And this slide shows you within the area of crop, cereals are growing only at 8.2%, pulses 11.3%. And if you look at sugar, 7%. So civils are a very small part, 5.85 lakh crores in 18-19 out of 32 lakh crores, and that is maybe about 14%. And in 2011-12, 3.36 lakh crores out of 90, that's about 17%. So it has come down, and we are not reorienting agriculture strategy for this. Now, what did the finance minister say in the budget? Next slide, please.
Questions.
Kisan drones to be used for crop assessment, digitization, etc. We'll come to you, Sharad, on the drones issue. We can talk about it in the next chat, next thing. NABARD to raise the fund under co-investment mode to finance startups. I'll ask you a question on that. Ken Bedwa, etc. So, Dr. Ghosh, the question for you is: with non-crop growing faster and increasing its share of GVA, does the budget address the changes to the agricultural GVA? Are we cognizant of the policy changes required to look at the changes and make sure we subscribe to the changes? Will the farmer's income double by 2022 or 2023?
Just before you begin, Dr. Ghosh, I would like to welcome Senior Advocate Lakshmikumaran, who has joined us now, who had a matter in the Supreme Court and therefore got delayed. He has joined us. Welcome, Mr. Lakshmikumaran, Senior Advocate.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yes, Dr. Ghosh.
I agree with this fact. We have written extensively on it. And just at the beginning of this discussion, I gave you some numbers saying that if the GVA of the agricultural sector is around 35 lakh crores, total outstanding bank credit is only around 13 lakh crores. So that means there is a potential of 20 lakh crores of extra bank credit to the agricultural value chain, which the banks can extend, but banks are unable to do. The problem in this sector is that there are issues relating to the regulations also. For example, I'll give a very peculiar regulation which the RBI has. For any loan which is serviced, if you service the interest, the loan is always supposed to be performing. But for the agricultural sector KYC loan, every year the KYC has to be renewed. You have to service both the principal and interest. So therefore, what happens is that if a small and marginal farmer has taken up a loan of say 50,000, next year he wants to go and again wants to take a loan, he has to pay back 50,000 with interest, then only his KYC will be renewed. So as a process, a lot of small and marginal farmers at the bottom of the pyramid are unable to access the banking system, because what happens is that when this loan waiver happens, basically the small and marginal farmers are the worst hit. They don't get the money, they go to the money lenders, and then they are actually called in a debt trap. So the agricultural sector requires imaginative policies. The KYC documentation has actually led to a significant formalization of the agricultural credit. Today we have 6.7 crore KYC farmers cards, but unfortunately the total number of people enjoying Prime Minister Kishan is 11.5 crores. So this gap between this 6.7 and 11.5 crores could possibly be the tenant farmers who are working in the states, and this has to be, and they also have to be more formalized into the banking system. But for that, a tenancy law needs to be structured, just as Andhra Pradesh has done. So there are deep-rooted problems in the banking sector. The first problem, as I have mentioned, that treat agricultural loan, KCC loan, as any other SME loan, where if you service the interest, you can get the KCC. And this also takes up a long amount of operational time of any bankers. So if you have 670 lakhs of KCC cards, which has to be renewed every year, you can understand the amount of effort which a bank branch has to give to just renew these cards. So we have been telling this regularly. The problem is basically this rule has to change. So until and unless these rules change, I think it will be difficult. And also the government has to be cognizant of the fact that they need to build up the agricultural value chain. All the things which the government is doing fine, but until and unless you build up the agricultural value chain across states, the way things are moving, I think it will be difficult on the part of have a proper price discovery in the rural sector. I am not very optimistic of the rural sector in terms of the reforms after which happened in the last year or so.
Sharad, this is an interesting question. NABARD will raise a fund under co-investment to finance startup agriculture and rural enterprises. The farmers are not getting the market price. What do you think needs to be done in terms of technology to make sure farmers get more of the market price? For example, fruits and vegetables, and where they get only 35-40%. And for Doc, I'll come to you a little bit later. And the fruits and vegetables, 35-40%. And maybe for animal husbandry, maybe 45-50%. How do you think this can be solved by technology?
We are in the fourth stage of financial inclusion. The first, of course, was Jan Dhan accounts powered by, as Dr. Ghosh said, eKYC. The second has been payments powered by UPI. The third that is taking place in front of our eyes, it hasn't reached mass market, is 2nd September launch of the account aggregator, which, believe it or not, is growing at 28% on a week-to-week basis. 28% week-to-week. All of it is for lending, because it allows a borrower to be able to send high provenance data, bank account data, GST data to the lender, and the lender for the first time doesn't have to worry whether this is authentic or not authentic. The fourth thing that is going to happen this year is what is called cash flow lending. See, Bank of International Settlements has been focusing on this. It is not just an Indian problem. Our lending is tied to physical collateral. And there are large populations in India who don't have a physical collateral to offer for lending anymore. And so unless we decouple lending from physical collateral, and you can't do it for term loans, obviously, but you can do it for short-term, short tenor, and small value loans, which you can tie to cash flow. India is now one of the first countries in the world where the cash flow cannot be fudged. It was anyway harder to fudge than your balance sheet and profit and loss, but it's now very difficult to fudge, because if the data is coming from GST on one side and your bank account on the other. So this year would be the year of the start of the cash flow revolution, lending revolution. And I know this is not yet believed fully by the mainstream bankers, because just the way they didn't see the payment revolution coming and hitting them, and the data revolution coming and hitting them, they'll, many of us look at it after the fact, but this is coming, and this is going to be something in the range of 12 to 15 lakh crores in the next 3 years. Now, a large proportion of that will go to informal sector, and agri is going to be part of that. And NABARD has done a pretty good job with self-help groups. They maintain accounts, their accounts are well maintained. So if we can tie this up with the self-help groups, which is the plan here, then you would be in a position to provide some level of expansion in the cash flow lending that takes place to those self-help groups in a fairly large way. So that's the opportunity in front of us, and I'm pretty confident that is what will pan out in the next 3-4 years.
So tell me, how have agri-techs increased farmers' income by connecting them directly to markets?
Yeah, so what happens in this is that, look, the way the cost comes down is because today in lending there are many costs, right? And of course there's an underwriting cost, but in addition to that, there is also the cost of issuing a loan, and then there is an acquisition cost. What the fintechs are able to do, who are in the front end of this, because they're dealing with the farmers anyway, they can now offer what is called as embedded finance. This is what BlackBuck is doing with truckers. This is what people are doing with Zomato is doing with restaurants. So the cost of acquisition comes down because they are already in touch with the borrowers, and the cost of friction of giving a loan is coming down because of eKYC and e-sign and account aggregator. So now what you're left with is the cost of capital. So I think it is really good for banks like SBI when they're able to partner with the right fintechs. So in India, there is a partnering model of fintechs that has been evolved, where fintechs provide low cost of acquisition, banks provide low cost of capital. When both of these costs come down, then the real beneficiary is the borrower. And that is something that we will see happening as we go forward during the year. So everybody in the value chain has a very important role to play.
Professor Vaidyanathan, a quick comment. You want a quick comment?
Yeah, just to two observation. Going back, you may recall in the 70s and 80s, the trade unions of bank were running a riot actually. I am sure you may recollect actually, when the computerization and other things were taken up, they resisted. They used to decide who should be posted where, which employee should be promoted. And there was a time in which the unions were running the banks. Today you look at it, the entire thing has gone actually. It's completely gone, and this small box is becoming a bank. So the bank is dead in the traditional sense of the term, not the banker. Hope Ghosh doesn't hear me wrongly. Exactly the same thing is going to happen for the farmers in India. Farmer, your farmer is not a unified single entity. There are millions of small and marginal who are not sustainable at all. It is the totally loss-making, unproductive, useless activity. Disguised unemployment is rampant and it cannot be sustained for a long period of time. I'm telling you, exactly the same what happened to the bank union is going to happen to these marginal and small, particularly after the withdrawal of this, the farm laws and other thing, government attempted. Exactly the same thing is going to happen. In 10 years, believe me, all these Chota Mota fellows have to go. There is no way you can, unless you want to sustain a totally unsustainable system. You go to any interior of UP, Bihar and other thing, lot of villages, there are only elderly people. There are no youngsters. They have all gone to towns to work. Elderly people are sitting in the charpai and looking at the sky and picking their nose. This is what is happening. I am telling this is not sustainable. Just wait. The only major thing government and society should be prepared is something like 15 crore people have to be relocated into something else from this land related activity. All your horticulture, what you showed there earlier in your picture, condiments and all these things, they are all getting into contract farming. Corporates are entering and they would be the one who would be able to, and they are getting it at the future prices. Derivative market is operative because our society is ahead of government. Let me again and again tell, and the regulation has to come much later. So farmer is not a single unified category. Let's be very clear. There are farmers and farmers. It's like businessmen. There are businessmen and businessmen. So we are always discussing about farmer, which is not a. So this whole the bottom category is unsustainable. 15 crore have to be provided alternate employment in the next 10 to 15 years. I don't think anybody is thinking about it even. The amount of, the way in which they are going to come out. Exactly the unions where they were in the 70s and 80s. The farmers are the bank union. The farmers are there today, and that is the major. It's not doubling their income or anything, actually.
No, that's very significant. Yes, we totally agree with you. There has to be a shift from agriculture to industry and services, and the 15 crore number is very good. Okay, Padam, next.
Next would be one more important segment of the economy, the micro, small, and medium enterprises. This is a question to Sharad. We'll look at the video of the finance ministers and then have certain data and then a question.
MSPs, Udyam, E-Shram, NCS, and ASEEM portals will be interlinked. Their scope will be widened. They will now perform as portals with live organic databases, providing G2C, B2C, and B2B services. These services will relate to credit facilitation, skilling, and recruitment with an aim to further formalize the economy and enhance entrepreneurial opportunities. Accelerating MSME performance, RAM program will outlay of 6,000 crore over 5 years will be rolled out. This will help MSME sector become more resilient, competitive, and efficient.
As a part of the liquidity help to the government, to the people concerned, we had, therefore, the next slide. Yeah, emergency credit line guarantee scheme to be extended to March 2023. 50,000 crores are earmarked exclusively for hospitality and related enterprises. We're also having a ramp, rising and accelerating MSME performance, 6,000 crores outlay for 5 years period of time. Credit guarantee trust for micro and small enterprises, not medium, micro and small enterprises. Going to be revamped with additional funds. And it's interesting to note that additional credit of 2 lakh crores for MSC and therefore to also expand the employment opportunities. Startup to facilitate drone Shakti, drone as a service. In select ITIs in all states, the required courses for skilling will be started. So looking at another important segment of the economy where you're looking at this to be competitive, resilient, and efficient. Question therefore to Sharada. Will the outlay and the outlines for the MSME sector make it more resilient, competitive, and efficient? What needs to be done more to make the MSMEs grow?
So MSMEs, there is clearly a crisis. I think Professor Vaidyanathan hinted at that. So there's a crisis on the ground, of course, but there's also a crisis in the system that we deal with the MSME. You know, the 92 revolution that Mohan you talked about, that freedom that came, that actually has not come into our MSME system. So the system that we have to provide them technical infrastructure, skilling, and market linkages has not changed. While it is not working on the ground, it is actually in disabuse. This is the same situation that we had in agriculture. It took us many years to acknowledge that more of the same in agriculture will not result in any change, and we need a departure. We need to let go of certain practices that were there and bring in a new system if we want agriculture to thrive. That thinking has to come in MSME. A new paradigm is needed. That paradigm is not there. You know, the famous thing, as people point out, apprenticeship, which can be very important for MSMEs, was in Indira Gandhi's 1971 plan, 20-point plan. It's not been implemented in the last 50 years. So the point is, we have been paying service to MSMEs all the while. Only silver lining that is there is that the GST paying MSMEs can now obtain of cash flow lending because their information is now available. And informational capital can substitute for physical capital, but that by itself is not going to solve it. We need a complete revamp of the MSME ministry and the way that is organized. It seemed that it would be possible with a PMO a person who moved from PMO to MSME secretary. For a while, it looked very promising. But as you know, that person took an early appointment and became a politician in UP. So we are back to square one. And so there is very little happening here. And I think this is very, very worrisome, because if we can take our MSMEs and make them robust and get them to create one more job as they go forward, we are talking about 10-20 million jobs even on a conservative basis. But we don't have a game plan of this. We are right now kind of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, and this needs very very thoughtful attention as we go forward. This is a fundamental area of reform.
Let's go to another one: human capital and the digital university. Yes, Finance Minister, what is your view? Video, please.
A digital university will be established to provide access to students across the country for world-class quality universal education with personalized learning experience at their doorsteps. This will be made available in different Indian languages and ICT formats. The university will be built on a networked hub and spoke model, with the hub building cutting-edge ICT expertise. The best public universities and institutions in the country will collaborate as a network of hub and spoke.
Now let us see what is happening in the digital initiatives. A digital university will be set up. Well, we don't know how it's going to work. Indian languages, network hub, best Indian public universities, national digital health ecosystem to be done, national tele-mental health program. Government is also using the word mental health. Set up 75 digital banking units, etc. Encourage further, adoption of digital payments. Next slide. Folks, the important thing here, next slide please, you look at this data. I think this latest data, 1921 in the National Family Health Survey is extremely important because it's very revealing where India is. A country is known by its demographics. Let us understand India's demographics. Population on the age 15 is come down to 26% and will decline. That means India is getting older. For the first time in the history, Professor, we have more women than men. When a society has more women than men, because women live longer, society becomes better. I'm sure you'll agree with us. We have got 1,020 women to 1,000 men as against 991. The gender ratio has also gone up at birth to 929 from 919. Households with electricity, with toilets and everything has gone up, which is very good progress. So people are getting the necessities of life. Next. Next slide. Yes, women who are literate, higher. Men who are literate, higher. Women who use internet, higher. Institutional birth, 88%. Today should be more than 90. Children who are stunted, less. Children who are wasted, less. Children who are severely wasted remain the same. So we are seeing an improvement in children's health. Next. Children who are under the age of 5, underweight, come down. Underweight, who are overweight has gone up. Children are getting overweight. Women are getting overweight. I think obesity is becoming a bigger problem. Children who are anemic, the whole data has to be seen again. But women have, the bank account has gone up. Women having a mobile phone, using it by themselves has gone up. Next. And in an interesting slide, the actual births, actual birth has been estimated births has been remaining the same at 26 crores. I say 25 because infant mortality is there, so we'll have 25 after 1 year. Actual deaths have been going up. The estimated deaths have been going up. So our birth, babies born remaining the same, people dying going up, and people are living longer. But the biggest change is India's total fertility rate. We are at 2%. Professor, all those people who say some communities are growing faster and etc., the data says we are below replacement rate. For a country like India, an emerging market, replacement is 2.3, not 2.1 as per developed market, but we're below that. With the whole of South India at 1.7. South is getting older, producing less babies. Next. And look at this data. This school data, because in class 1, 2, and 3, almost all children are in school. The average is come down from 2.8 crores to 2.46 crores in just 10 years. Average of class 11 and 12, 9 and 10 has gone up from 1.58 crores to 1.92 crores. So more and more children will complete class 10. This is remarkable. Then if you look at this slide, population above 60 is now 10%. And by 2031, it will be 13%. Many of us will be there. Maybe most of us are there right now. Then you see the slide at the bottom. The fertility and literacy. Next, please. Yeah, fertility and literacy. Illiterates have 3 children, below primary 2.9, graduate and above 1.7, class 12. So remarkably, fertility is linked to girls' women education. When women are educated and more women are getting educated, we have a lesser population. We are in the very sweet spot. This is remarkable data. Next. Now look at higher education data. For the first time, women GER is higher than men last year. Because women's population only 48.5%, and between 30 to 20, women enrollment has gone up by 4.88% a year. Men enrollment is only 2.42%. So women are going to dominate higher education in future. But Vaidyanathan, I'm sure you have more women coming to IIM today than 10 years ago. In medical school at Manipal, 60% of the class is women. It's remarkable what is happening. And if you look at communities, SC, ST make up 16.6% of population, 14.9% of students, ST 8.6, 5.53, OBC 40, 36. Only Muslims are behind. They make up 15% of population, only 5.25% of students. But the good news is, Muslim enrollment is going up by 7.68% for the last 7 years, the highest among all communities. That means Muslim youth want to get educated, they're going more and more, but historically they've not been educated. We're seeing a change. And then general merit, if you look at the general merit, total number of students, 12, 13 is come down. That means the population there is declining in general merit. The so-called forward caste, because they're going away to America, Professor, are they probably, having the benefit of lower children? And we got 3.85 crore young people in college. Women GR 27% and men is 26.9, total GR 27. This is remarkable. For 7 years, enrollment in college is going up to 3.57 and 1 crore people are leaving college every year. Next. This Professor Vaidyanathan and Soumya, then we'll come to our latest guest. Professor, is the government doing enough to develop human capital? Will the NEP improve the quality of education? Yes, Professor, for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think this is one area where you cannot significantly blame the government. Government is doing definitely enough to develop human capital. But there is a ticking bomb, which you mentioned, which I think many are not even understanding. The new parliament is coming up, the building. It can accommodate 700 people. And the constituency are going to be reclassified based upon the population census of 21-22, assuming that the census is now currently it is based on 1971. Kindly note, it is frozen at that level because we normally use what are called very old data or POTA data. POTA data means pulled out of thin air, like your Mandal Commission data of 1931. Anyhow, the number of seats in parliament for states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka are all going to be drastically lower, which they are not going to accept. It's a very, very major issue facing the Indian Republic actually. If you say that UP is going to have X number and Tamil Nadu or Karnataka is going to have Y number, it's not going to be. So it is going to create a huge amount of social tension. I think government must constitute now itself a commission to reorganize the state, not necessarily the current formulation, to minimize tensions, to minimize the tension in terms of representation. Otherwise, some of the states will have very meager representation. That's not going to be acceptable as per the current linguistic thing. I'm just pointing it out to the crisis. One more thing is the education currently is completely, what one can call messed up. We have RTE. Everybody knows that it is not applicable across the board. Large number of institutions run by non-minorities. They all want to be classified as minorities in today. Ramakrishna Mission filed an application telling we are minority because they wanted to come out of Jyoti Babu's control. A large number of Linkayat institution in Karnataka all want to claim that they are. No, we are not seriously looking at the crisis which is being faced. Massive crisis in terms of. So if there are 2 Telugus in my board in Madras, my school system, I am a minority. If I have 2 Tulu speaking people in Bangalore board, that I am a minority. So this is totally, Second is, everybody wants to have CBSE, ICSE type of syllabus, but the state governments have to approve, or state government have to give NOC. Whenever NOC means, it means bribery. I'm being very, because I don't require any position in government or anything. NOC means bribery. That's the alternative word for, and it's a sophisticated word only we want to use. You are talking about MSME. The only way MSME can survive in this country is abolish Shops and Establishment Act, abolish, Food and Adulteration Act. 28 Act I will give you today. Abolish all of them. MSME will be great. One thing, to start a small shop in Bangalore, you require 22 regulatory framework have to be cleared. I used to give a project to my student, go and start a shop in Bangalore. It's easier to acquire a gun in Bangalore because there are only 4 regulations than to, stop a petty shop. That's why there are more violence in the streets. 22 regulations. All the students used to fail in that course. Fail means they cannot start a shop. I used to give them mark for methodology. You to put a board on your shop, there is a bribery. If you want to put a neon board for the night, there is another bribery. Kannada font should be 60. English font should be 40. There is an inspector. It's a chaos actually. What we require is, let me be very clear, both on the education front as well as on MSME, what we require is 28 Narasimha Raos we require today. 28 states are there in the country. 28 Narasimha Raos we require. Another 80 Narasimha Raos in all the corporations we require. Just he closed the controller of capital issue. Same way, large number of these should be closed. Shops and Establishment Act, one government minister told in the assembly that if it has to be really implemented in my state, 95% of the shops and establishment have to be closed. Do we have any sense of shame? Is it still left with us? I submit my case.
Thank you, Professor. I think, we'll go to the next slide. It's pretty depressing, but one thing, Sharad, Sharma and Prof. Vaidyanathan are minorities in Karnataka. Even though we don't get any benefits, there's some information for everybody. I'm sure many chartered accountants too are. Okay, next one. I've lost it. We'll bring in Lakshmikumaran later. Huh?
Yeah.
After this. Yeah.
Over 25,000 compliances were reduced and nearly 1,500 union laws were repealed. This is the result of our government's strong commitment for minimum government and maximum government. 1,486 union laws were repealed. Our trust in the public and ease of doing business is what is highlighted here. For the Amrit Kal, the next phase of ease of doing business 2.0 and ease of living will be launched. In our endeavor to improve productive efficiency of capital and human resources, we will follow the idea of trust-based governance. The new phase will be guided by an active involvement of the states, digitization of manual processes and interventions, integration of the central and state level systems through IT bridges, a single point access for all citizen-centric services, and standardization and removal of overlapping compliances, crowdsourcing of suggestions, and ground level assessment of the impact with active involvement of citizens and businesses will be encouraged.
Folks, this is about ease of doing business and ease of living. And here we'll bring in, next please. Let us bring in something which is very exciting, the biggest transformation in India in the last 10 years. $70 billion of capital came to startup 2014-20, and last year, calendar year, Sharad, $40 billion came in. And Bangalore tops with 45%. Next slide. We got 85 unicorns, 43 unicorns came up last year. We are the third largest number in terms of unicorns who have created value of about $257 billion, and total startups have created value of $400 billion. Next one, please. Here is some data. 57,000 startups launched till date. Now I think it's 60,000. 85 unicorns, 2,400 investors, $112 billion of investment between 14 to 21, $4,283 billion combined value of Indian unicorns, 17 Indian internet companies listed up to date. Next. $42 billion came in 2021, and currently there's been a spurt at a time when it came out of COVID. Next. 85 unicorns, you've seen the valuations, unicorns, companies who could be unicorns, e-commerce companies. Bangalore dominates with 34 unicorns, and Bangalore dominates with 30 unicorns. Next. India has the third highest number of unicorns in the world. Next. Roti enhancement. Now, these are all some of the things that are there with the Prime Minister. Now, next. The Finance Minister said, now, Sharad, let me ask a question. Is the government doing enough to improve the cost and ease of doing business? In the background, what is happening in this country in the startup technology? What are we seeing this burst of innovation happening in such a large way? What do you see in the next 2 or 3 years? Because you are the heart of it. You helped create the system. Please give us your views on what is happening and what you see in the next 2 or 3 years. You are on mute, Sharad.
The organism.
Organizers, please.
Yeah. So of the 80 or so unicorns, about half of them are not domiciled in India. They are Indian companies, but not domiciled in India. And we can see from what happened with Flipkart and more recently with even Freshdesk, that money does not come back to India, right? So Flipkart's $20 billion, very little of it has come back into the system. In fact, one of the co-founders is actually managing the money and living in Singapore to manage the money, and none of that is coming back here. So we need to create rupee capital. This is something, Mohan, you have been chasing as well. And it's very important that we create rupee capital on one side and eliminate the ease of doing business issues, bring them so that they don't have to go out, because there are many frictions, which many of us, including you, we refer to them as stay in India checklist. And we need to implement the remaining parts of the stay in India checklist so that these 80 companies, when they do wealth creation, that wealth accrues to India. So this is number one. Number two is that the trends that are visible is, of course, the one trend that has been there for some time is that middle class behaves the same everywhere in the world. So the way Indians will buy a car will not be any different from the way they buy a car in China or in Europe or anywhere else. So that middle class companies, and therefore, for them to be able to raise money was always very easy. Now we are beginning to see for the first time, and I think the credit goes partly to what is happening with India Stack, but also to Jio, that you are beginning to create valuable companies in the Bharat market, right? And therefore, for the first time, you're beginning to see very high quality entrepreneurship happen in the Bharat market. And the third shift that is happening is related to actually, more deep tech kind of startups. And there I would suggest again, this is evident to us, but we don't appreciate this. And that is happening mostly in biopharma. And why is it happening in biopharma? Let's ask ourselves a question. Why is India have a COVID vaccine and Germany, Switzerland, Korea, and Japan, which are thriving biopharma industry? They don't. And the reason goes back to something called BIRAC. And BIRAC has played a role which NIH or NSF has played, where they have given ignition grants and other challenge grants to many 800 biopharma companies in India. And that is public money rooted into the startup ecosystem, but not by civil servants, but by experts in the industry. And this is a very important shift. Today, Mighty gives as much money as BIRAC, but all of it is controlled by civil servants. BIRAC is a success story because it is not driven by civil servants. And that is how it has to be. So there are these changes that are taking place. I think pockets that are beginning to emerge that will be very valuable in the future. As I said, we must make our companies our own, solve the problem of redomiciling. We must make sure Bharat market gets the attention that it seeks. And we must create this new ecosystem with public goods, private innovation ecosystem for deep tech companies, because that's the only way we'll create the next generation companies in that area. So those are my comments on this right now.
You have worked very hard. Are you satisfied as to the state of affairs today?
If one is satisfied, then you can't work hard, right? I mean, so see, I think given the way to look at it is that we've come a long way. There is little or no doubt about that. And we should celebrate that. We should stop and enjoy that and take pride in that, I would say. But I think to reach our full potential as a country, for the kind of native human capital that we have, for the culture that we have, for the millennia, several millennia long kind of an unbroken civilization that we have a very long way to go. So I don't think we can afford to rest. But I think taking short breaks to celebrate how far we've come is a good thing, but there's a long way to go, miles to go before we sleep.
Thank you. Mr. Lakshmikumaran, now why don't you come in and tell us, is the government doing enough to improve the cost and ease of business? You've been working very hard in that particular area. You're the heart of it. Please give us your views.
You are on mute.
You are on mute.
Again, organizers, please.
Organizers.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The ease of doing business from where it starts and where it ends. So long as the government controls the activities of human beings, manages, the problem continues. Now, if you look at the laws in India, most of the laws in India, quite a few of them are pre-independence law. Your taxation laws or your other regulatory laws. Those laws were made by the British to rule India. Ruler versus ruled. And when India got independence, adopted those laws and said very clearly in the constitution that unless those laws are repealed, they'll continue, including the judgments of the House of Lords. Now, what happened after that? The Indian ministers, bureaucrats, they found these laws are very nice to interpret, implement. And they tightened it. And therefore, what we are seeing today, many laws, which are the legacy of the past, is tighter than what it was. What was the penalty earlier, now it is much more than that. It is like if you're jumping the stop and go signal, I'm not even talking red signal, stop and go signal, the punishment is death penalty. How do you like it? Do have those type of laws, as Ms. Vaidyanathan was mentioning about the Shop and Establishment Act. If it is fully implemented, 95% has to be closed. It appears that the government has a law where you necessarily have to transgress the law and then you go back to them and then say sorry. Now, coming back to the question from Mohandas, the government has not done enough. The statistics which have been given as a number of laws repealed, that does not mean that the regulations have gone. I know many of those legislations have been repealed or OTO's notifications or OTO's legislation. That is, the legislation limited the time. For example, if you say a Finance Act, the Finance Act has a time of 1 year. After that, it is no impact. So many of those laws which died on its own were given a death row separately, and then it is now said that we have removed so many laws, repealed, etc., etc. They are good statistic purposes, but that does not translate into the so-called ease of doing business. What is necessary? It is not about the law being repealed or not. It is about the attitude of the bureaucracy, how they administer. And if that is not changed, any amount of liberalization can continue. I feel in this country, controls are going, controllers are not going.
That's a good one. Yes, true.
Dream of doing, ease of doing business, etc., can remain in paper. In reality, it is tougher and tougher. And I am meeting cross-section of industries where CEOs, CFOs, and even the mid-level people, their life has not become simpler in the recent past.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Okay, Padam, next.
We go into therefore urban development and look into what the finance minister has told us.
By the time of India at 100, nearly half our population is likely to be living in urban areas. To prepare for this, orderly urban development is of critical importance to help the country's economic potential,
Sure.
including livelihood opportunities for the demographic dividend. For this,
Yes, sir, as well.
on the one hand, we need to nurture the megacities and their hinterlands to become current centers of economic growth. On the other, we need to facilitate tier 2 and tier 3 cities to take on the mantle in the future. This would require us to into centers of sustainable living with opportunities for all, including women and our youth. For this to happen, urban planning cannot continue with a business as usual approach. We plan to steer a paradigm change.
This is again a question to Lakshmikumaran, senior advocate. Another facet of the entire improvement in the conditions of living, ensure that we have megacities that are well developed, that have all the facilities for us. And therefore, in that connection, the FM says that there is going to be a high-level committee of reputed urban planners, urban economists, and institutions to recommend urban sector policies, capacity building, planning implementation, and governance. There's also going to be a lot of support to the states for urban capacity building. This is interesting. Modernization of building bylaws, town planning schemes, transit-oriented development to be implemented. 5 academic institutions to be taken as centers of excellence. They'll have endowment funds of 200 crores, 250 crores each. AICT to improve stability. Next slide, please. Now, to promote use of urban transport in public in the urban areas, public transport, we want clean tech, we want clean energy. Therefore, we will have battery swapping policy, interoperability standards to be introduced. Private sector to develop sustainable and innovative business model for battery or energy as a service. This is again interesting. Next one, facility for transliteration of land records across any of the regional languages to be rolled out. And one nation, one registration service. One farmer, one ration card. One nation, one registration service for anywhere registrations of deed and documents. They're very interesting in our methodology. With all this, the question to you, Mr. Lakshmikumaran, is, are these measures adequate to nurture the mega cities to become centers of economic growth?
Mr. You are assuming that all this will happen. And then you are asking a question, if this happen, are they enough? I will say, if 10% of this happens, we'll be better off. That's all.
We are believing that these megacities are only grandiose statements, will not happen in actual reality.
See, we are talking about one nation, one registration. Do you know, sir, whenever we do due diligence, especially with regard to the land that's ultimately to be procured, it is like a bottomless pit. We do not know whether the title belongs to who. In different states, different methodology being followed, different languages, and there is no question of any updation of this. It is a nightmare. If we are going to have a digital record of the ownership of this land, of fixtures, etc., is a great thing. I don't know whether it will going to happen now. If they start now, at least, and if it is not going to happen immediately, but 10-15 years or so, then it will be a dream.
Going to continue with this, going to the next slide, and question to Sharad and Vaidyanathan, Professor Vaidyanathan. Taking further on the urban, going to industry now. Atmanirbharta defense, 68% of capital procurement budget to be earmarked for domestic industry is up from 58% in the last year. R&D, defense R&D, 25% for startups and academia. Development of military platforms and equipment to be open to private industry through SPV model. Spectrum auctions to be conducted. 5G spectrum is going to happen next year. Design-led manufacturing to be launched to build a strong ecosystem for 5G as a part of the PU scheme. Annual collection, 5% of the annual collections under the Universal Service Obligations Fund to be allocated to enable affordable broadband and mobile service proliferation in rural and remote areas. Next, continuing further in this aspect of optical fiber to be laid in all villages concerned. SEZ to be replaced with another enactment with more participation from the state government on this matter. There are going to be therefore development of enterprises and service hubs, amendments to insolvency and bankruptcy code such that we have faster efficiency in resolution of the insolvency processes. Companies' new registration will be faster. Companies' resolution or winding up is bound to be faster. That's what the finance minister makes a statement. Complete paperless end-to-end online e-bill system to be introduced, to be used by all central ministries for their procurements. Union ministries to pay 75% of running bills mandatorily within 10 days. The entire procurement system, how will they therefore procure standardized goods or non-standardized goods, and the payment therefore is all going to be now laid down in terms of regulations concerned. With this background, therefore, the question to Sharad first is, India needs to grow the industry to create a large-scale jobs. We have 28% of the GDP contributed by the industry concerned. Will the PLI scheme be the magic wand to accelerate industrial development? Some portions of the PLI scheme and the impact on it vis-a-vis the imports from China or the exports to China we have already touched upon. If you can therefore add on to this aspect to say that what India needs to do for the growth of the industry to create large-scale jobs. Some comments from you, then Professor Vaidyanathan for brief comments here.
I'll tell a story. It goes back to 1946, July 1946. It is embedded, some people call it the most important memo in the last 150 years. It's called Science, the Endless Frontier by Vannevar Bush. So in 1946, you remember the Americans had won the World War II for sure, but they had lost only 418,000 people in the war. Now, in contrast, India lost between 2 to 2.5 million people, and the Soviet Union lost 24 million combatants. But Hollywood will have you believe that this is not the reason. So Vannevar Bush argues in his memo, he says we didn't win the war because of our people on the ground. We won it because of technology. The Manhattan Project, the atom bomb, the microwave project that allowed for deep bombing in the Nazi areas, and then the Cypher project. So he said, now in this economic war that we have, we must create a science and technology based economy. And from 90, there was consensus on this, but this lingered, as it does in any democracy, till 4th October 1957, when the Soviets launched the Sputnik. Now, we don't appreciate what happened in the next 1 year. By February of 1958, DARPA was launched. DARPA is what took the defense research to university labs, and it required so many years for it to crystallize because there was a competition. Who would manage those funds that go to the university labs? Would they be civil servants? Would they be military officers? Or will they be researchers drawn from the community? And what happened was that it ended up being the third. And today the 140 program officers of DARPA, none of them is a military officer and not one of them is a babu. So this is what we need. The only example of that we have is actually Bayrak, as I pointed to you. Then the second change that happened was NASA was created in July of 1958. And many of our children and many of us who have benefited from US came from another third act, which they worked to pass before the anniversary of Sputnik, which was called the National Defense Education Act. As Kanwal Rekhi says, all the $8 Indians and the $20 Indians, that went to the US, for graduate studies. There was no suddenly in the universities all over the US a desire to have brown balance or brown diversity. The only reason they got them was because the government was funding them money to say, hey, you can bring a foreigner in if that foreigner elevates the average of the classes in the top half of the class. As Kanwal Rekhi of TIE says, then what is the surprise that if a person was in the top half of the class on day one, that he would be in the top half of the class 4 years later, 14 years later, and 40 years later? Damn it, he was an immigrant who wanted to make something of his life. So this is the revolution that happened. This is the ecosystem. Then subsequently in 1962, the Japanese adopted, and all optoelectronics of Japan is built on that, and many industries are built on that model. In 74, I already mentioned the Koreans adopted. In 1988, 1 year before Russian emigres started coming in by accident, the Israelis didn't know that's going to happen. Israelis adopted it. In 1991, 1992, the Chinese adopted it. We haven't got the religion on that yet. Now, there are inklings that we are beginning to get that religion. But I will submit to you that if we don't get that religion, then in the service industry, the coming productivity improvements from digitization that Professor Vaidyanathan referred to in banking, that we are going to be happening in every industry that we talk about, is going to lead to a lot of joblessness. So we need to introduce a new innings in India that is based on a new innovation model, and that has to be a new set of industries that we bring in. And we have early signs that the government is beginning to acknowledge that by talking about it, but very little is happening there. And we need to educate our bureaucracy about this, our politicians about this. If we cannot do this, we will remain a limpy Thailand, and we will not have a future more than that as we go forward. So it's a very big issue. I am sorry I took so much of time to talk about it, but I feel very strongly, so I wanted to get that out for all of you.
Therefore, you've heard the developments from 46 onwards as to what has helped different countries to grow. And in this background, therefore, your contributions to the aspect as to what needs to be done for industry to create large-scale job and be a significant contributor to the development of this country. Professor Vaidyanathan.
Oh, thank you, Sharma ji. You have mentioned what all should be or what all can be mentioned in this particular area. There is the most interesting thing you were mentioning about the developments which took place using our students in US. One of my American colleagues nicely used to put it. Basically, we have outsourced reproduction to Indian women. That's all. Because the American woman has less and less reproductivity. So what is the scheme we thought in 90? Dean Rusk has written in his book actually. Good scheme is Indian women are producing good kids actually. They are getting good education. Culture is also being taught to them. And when they grow up after IIT or this type of thing, bring them to US. So outsourcing reproduction was the basic of one of the schemes which US adopted successfully. As far as we are concerned, very sorry to tell you, we are never known for innovators. We are adapters. We are so glad that 900 million mobile phones are there, and we didn't invent any mobile phone. Nobody can accuse of doing that. We are not inventors, we are adapters. So this is what. Name me one invention, sir, in the last 70 years, which has dominated the world from India, right? Except very recently you were mentioning about this pharma. Otherwise, we are not known for, but we need to create a huge amount of opportunities for jobs getting lost in. We are talking about technology, digitalization, this is, but we are not realizing significant amount will be moved out of that actually. Nothing, very simple. An estimate suggests in Delhi itself, 65,000 auto people lost their after the arrival of the metro. And lot of them have to be re-employed or, getting it done in terms of what you may loosely call the last mile pickup. Same thing is going to happen in Bangalore. Same thing is going to happen in other cities also. And most of these people are above 40. It's not very easy to retrain them and reskill them, and it's a very, very complicated thing. So we might have to sustain huge amount of unemployable population for time to come, unless we plan very, very well in advance. So which I don't think we are very, very serious about it. Large, as I told you, from AG agriculture itself, roughly 15 crore we have to be prepared in order to alternate avenues and other things. And unfortunately, a democracy mean elected system, one man, one vote. All these popularity games are there. So we do not want to encourage. We are talking in terms of creating 5 centers. University takes, not 1 or 2 years, it takes something like 10 years at least minimum to get established, to go on its track and other thing. the amount of the crisis which we are facing on the job front. I don't think we are significantly understanding it at all, right? So this is something which I think we have to put our head together and create huge amount of newer opportunities and mechanics of utilizing existing ones actually. For instance, large number of big industries today don't employ people. Not many people are even aware of it actually. Most of the FMCG companies, more than 50% is outsourced, done by cottage and small industries. Our biscuit manufacturing, our toothpaste manufacturing, and that has become the norm in from FMCG to consumer durable. And it has become norm in even in high-tech industries actually. Everything is outsourced, which is done by small and medium, what we call popularly. And so this is something which I think we have to be extremely serious and very required level of skill job are not available. I find it very tough to locate a good plumber in Bangalore. We talk so much about of unemployment. 60% of Indian plumbers come from Kendrapara, one district. We have not trained them, and we have to locate them using our friends and well-wishers and other. Same thing about carpenter. Same thing about cobbler. Same thing about tailor. Skilled people are becoming extremely rare, and that is the area where I think we have to focus. We have to create appropriate levels of jobs for people at that level in order to carry on their own vocation. So this is something which politicians won't understand, because for them, vote is the primary, what one can call reason for their existence. I think we must face this problem squarely. And thank you, Sharma, for initiating this too serious an issue.
Video 9, because of time, go to video 10. Video 10, please. We'll come to fiscal management and the budget figures.
Expenditure of 4.83 lakh crores of rupees projected in the BE 2022. The revised estimate is 37.70 lakh crores. The revised estimate of capital expenditure is 6.3 lakh crores of rupees. This includes an amount of 51,971 crores towards settlement of outstanding guaranteed liabilities of Air India and its other sundry commitments. Coming to the budget estimates, Honorable Speaker, sir, the total expenditure in 22-23 is estimated at 39.45 lakh crores, while the total receipts other than borrowings are estimated at 22.84 lakh crores of rupees. The revised fiscal deficit, Honorable Speaker, in the current year is estimated at 6.9% of the GDP, as against 6.8% projected in the budget estimates. The fiscal deficit is in 22-23 is estimated at 6.4% of the GDP, which is consistent with the broad path of the fiscal consolidation announced by me last year to reach a fiscal deficit level below 4.5% by 25-26. While setting the fiscal deficit level in 22-23, I am conscious of the need to nurture growth through public investment to become stronger and sustainable.
Sorry, let's look at the figures and let's look at what is happening in the budget. Yes. If you look at the figures here, fiscal deficit in 2021 went up to 18 lakh crores. 21-22 has come up to 15.91 lakh crores. But you must understand there is a expenditure secretary called TV Somanathan. He found in 2021 that the fiscal deficit is running much below what they estimated, and he took over the borrowing from the small savings fund of 3.5 lakh crores which was given to FCI, put it in the budget, and then increase the fiscal deficit because everybody was saying that this is going to be a bad year, and cleaned up the government fiscal. He also underestimated the taxes. He had more taxes to pay. And that's why in 2021, we see a lower fiscal deficit. Next year too is underestimated taxes, so this could be much lower. Next. Here are the figures, 9.2 come to 6.9. Out of 9.2, possibly about 2 is because of the takeover of the liabilities. So it should actually be 7.2, but it doesn't matter because most people in this country don't look at figures deeply. Next. Trends in inflation. The UPA era had high inflation. The NDA era comes down. So once you must have a separate session with Prof. Vaidyanathan, why did suddenly when the NDA came in 2014, why did the inflation come down from 9.5% to 5.9% and stayed around that? Not today, Professor, some other time. Next slide. Now this is interesting. Look at the total debt to GDP. Professor, Japan is 444%, Canada 356%, US 318%. Poor India is only 122%. As per the IMF database, government debt to GDP, Japan is 237%, India is only 68%, private debt to GDP, only 54%. I'm wondering why people are not lending more money. The whole world, all the big economies have huge debt to GDP, including public and private, but India is very, very low. Next. Now, look at the budget figures to make it credible. 18-19, the receipts were close to budget. 19-20, they were less than budget. 20-21, it went up. Receipts went up more than budget. Of course, 2021, there was a takeover of the liabilities. 21-22 has been very good. It went up by 17.6%. And budget estimate, like Prof. Vaidyanathan said, the increase in spending is very little. Professor, the increase in spending is very little because in 21-22, we had 1.5 lakh crores, one-off expenditure. Here in India, there are subsidies for foreign trade of 53,000 crores, some extra subsidy for food, etc. And that's why the increase is not too much. And if you look at gross tax revenues, you'll find that 18-19, less than budget, 19-20, less than budget, 20-21, less than budget, 21-22, 3 lakh crore more. Because we had TV Somasundaram, right? Somasundaram, a brilliant man from Tamil Nadu who played magic by underestimating revenues at the beginning of the year. Even for this, 25.16 is underestimated. We'll show you the figures. And next year also is grossly underestimated. If you look at the subsidies, you'll find some interesting thing that in 2021, 7 lakh crore of subsidies. That's because 3.5 lakh crore of the liability given to SBI, which is taken over by government. It is a past liability adjusted in the accounts. That's why chartered accountants can understand all this. But other people in this country, parliamentarians, don't seem to understand this. Next, please. This is some interesting data again. Budgeted tax revenue of current year on actual tax from the previous year, 19%, 18%, and 21-22, you can see it again. Actual tax revenue of current year and budgeted tax revenue previous year, you can see it. So it means that the budgeted figures are becoming more credible. Next. And this is an interesting budget at a glance. 2021 non-scheme expenditure compared to 21-22 is less. You've seen 21-22 non-scheme expenditure has gone up, and scheme expenditure is also there. Total expenditure has gone up this year by 3 lakh crores. Fiscal deficit is come down. Primary deficit, which is essentially the amount of interest that you pay before you borrow, is come down, and the fiscal is turning better. Next. And total receipts. Here too, you can see the growth in gross tax revenues in 21-22 is 24%. That's very, very high. And if you look at capital receipts, it's come down because the recoveries, the total amount of disinvestment was budgeted of 1.75 lakh crores, is come down to 78,000 crores. And the dividends from public sector has gone up. Despite this, we're seeing an increase in total receipts. Next. And here's an interesting slide. If you look at the breakup of gross tax revenues, corporation tax has gone up despite reducing the tax to 25%, and income tax has also gone up, coming off a bad year. Custom has gone up, excise has gone up, of course, tempering because they reduced the duties on petrol and fuel. And if you look at the ratio of direct taxes, it's gone up to 5.4% as per revised estimate, and indirect taxes has also gone up 5.5. So coming off a bad year, we're seeing an increase in taxes, and next year too, the growth will continue. Next. And here's some interesting data for those of you who love data. You can see that personal income tax and corporate tax is going up. That means, the lower tax rate, 25% for the corporate world, has really led to a massive increase in corporate taxes. But corporate profitability too has gone up for the last 6 quarters. Next. Now here, if you look at this piece of data, 21-22 revised estimate of the expenditure 37 lakh crores. So next year is going to be 39.45 lakhs crores, and the fiscal deficit is coming down. Next. So, Professor, the question for you before you go on to taxation with Lakshmikumaran, with this increase in capital expenditure, propel India on a higher growth path, consumption makes up 70% economic growth. Are we doing enough to increase consumption? Professor, the middle class of this country, 38 crore people, pay the majority of taxes. Out of 138 crore people, 100 crore people live on less than $1,000 a year. The 38 people have an income of an average of $5,000 a year. They pay the majority of taxes. They are the majority consumers. The 100 crore people are the subsidy receivers. Now, this year, the income tax, there's no income tax relief for the middle class. The 38 crore people have been totally ignored. 8 crore out of them pay taxes. Assuming a family of 4 per family, members of 4 per family, that is 32 crore people out of 38. So can you tell us, with this increase in capital expenditure, propel India, and why the government is not looking at stimulating consumption, which is 70% of the economy's growth? Professor Vaidyanathan.
Oh, okay. This my own reading of the situation is government thinks supply will create its own demand. The demand side actually has to be given more important. For instance, I'll give simple illustration. A restaurant owner near my home who used to get overcrowding actually. They used to issue token and people used to wait before the pandemic. And now he is having hardly few customers even on weekends. So I asked him, why don't you go for buy? He said, I can go for bank loan. There is a adequate amount of funding available, but I require customers. I require people to come and sit and eat food or order on takeaway basis. So there is a demand side issue is extremely important. And the most important point is the middle class, what you are telling, roughly 50 to 55% is spent on food, vegetables, milk, and associated medicine issues today. We are on the left side of the Engels curve. Let's be very clear about it. We are not like the European spending or something. I think government thinks that increasing the supply would by itself facilitate the growth. We have to wait and see how much that type of economy is going to be sustained. But there is a interesting point in this. Given the fact that elections are coming, the government doesn't seem to have been extremely populist or whatever you call it, appeasement oriented, or announcing a lot of these freebies and other things. That's something which I think one has to appreciate. And I would definitely say that the finance minister is, in Tamil we call it Sikanam, frugal. She has been in dealing with the constituents as well as dealing with expenditure. So our frugality, hopefully, she's like most of the middle class housewives, she's frugal. She's the one who represents actually the quintessential frugality of the Indian ethos. So Nari Shakti represented through her, and how much this frugality is going to help or facilitate the boosting the economy instead of going through the normal route of demand driven and other thing. There has been some amount of concession given in the last 10 years. Let's not forget about it also. We used to have huge amount of rates. Rates could have been brought down, slabs could have been increased. That would have been a and make it simpler in the sense of filing of income tax return and other thing. My chartered accountant friends will not agree with that, because once it is made simpler, their jobs also will become simpler. So more issues are involved. They are very happy about it. They will say, sir, we will take care of it. So this is the position. So we have to wait and see how much of this frugality is going to help us in the coming period. If it really works, nothing like that, I would say, because this is the first time a non-freebie based system is getting involved, particularly in the context of polls being nearer. So this is, I think, a very watershed moment, I would say, from that point of view.
Thank you, Professor. Now we'll go to direct taxes. Padam.
Yeah, we'll look into what the finance minister has to say, then go into some data and statistics. And Mr. Lakshmikumaran, this will be a question for you. We have 2 slides on direct and indirect taxes. Both the questions will be for you. We'll begin with direct taxes first. Slide the video of the finance minister first.
Speaker, sir, I take this opportunity to thank all the taxpayers of our country who have contributed immensely to strengthen the hands of the government in helping their fellow citizens in this hour of need. So I have brought in a little verse from the Mahabharata. I won't spend more time reading because I would like the speech to get enough time. However, the substance of it is the king must make arrangements for yoga kshema, which is the welfare of the populace, by way of abandoning any laxity and by governing the state in line with dharma, along with collecting taxes which are in consonance with dharma. This is Mahabharata Shanti Parva Adhyaya, Shloka 11 from 72. Drawing wisdom from our ancient texts, we continue on the path to progress. The proposals in this budget, while continuing with our declared policy of stable and predictable tax regime, intend to bring more reforms that will take ahead our vision to establish a trustworthy tax regime. This will further simplify the tax system, voluntary compliance by taxpayers, and reduce litigation.
We go into certain data, very interesting. Mohan had played certain data, and one segment of that is being played here. Very interesting data in terms of how much we are going to get by way of direct taxes. Initially, when the budget was drawn for March 21 year ending, 22 year ending, we said we will estimate 22.17 lakh crores. If you look into this slide now, we are revising the estimate to about 25.16 lakh crores as direct tax collections. This is the revised estimate for 21-22. This is the actual collections. From April to December, we have already collected 19.28 lakh crores. Last year in the 3 months, January to March 2021, we had about close to 7 lakh crores. If you look at therefore what we've done at the bottom of the slide therefore would be that if you were to assume the same thing, we will earn this year also. Then the aggregate collection would be what is there in the 4th column, 26.15 lakh crores. It will be much more than the revised estimates for 21-22. And there is an underestimation to the extent of approximately 1 lakh crores. Looking into the buoyancy, possibly the actual collection will be more than 1 lakh crores in the region of somewhere between anywhere between 1 lakh to 2 lakh crores. So there is some sort of an underestimation in terms of the actual collection the government is going to get. And for the next year, they're budgeting about 27.57 lakh crores, a modest increase. What's important, therefore, as Mohan mentioned, there has been a significant reduction in corporate tax, but nevertheless, the overall performance in terms of the tax-paying public from the corporate, the tax collections have increased both at the corporate tax level and at the income tax level. Mohan also had mentioned about the disinvestment process not coming up to the mark concern. That's fine. Look into what the finance minister has to talk about, the direct tax proposals. We'll go into the next slide. No changes in the personal income tax slab. We've had some discussion already on this matter in the course of our discussion today. no changes in corporate income tax, no changes in capital gains tax. Only there is going to be a cap on this surcharge on long-term capital gains, whatever be the nature. 15% is the maximum you will have a surcharge on. Surcharge for AOP is also capped at 15%. Some concession to manufacturing industry, 15% tax. The starting phase was there has to be sunset clause by 31st of March 2023. They are extending by 1 more year. Startup also we are having 1 year extension in terms of the eligibility for a tax benefit under 80 IAC. If you are having undisclosed income, then the proposal is that we will not give you any set off of losses against that undisclosed income detected during search and survey. We are having also a facility for paying additional taxes and having the ability to file an updated tax return. We're saying 25% tax if the updated return is in 12 months, 50% additional tax if the updated return is in 24 months. We're also having alternate minimum tax relief to persons with disability, litigation management to avoid repetitive appeals by the income tax department. We had too many schemes, the dispute resolution scheme, the Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, the increase in the monetary time limit, the monetary limits for filing. Despite that, the finance minister still worried that there will be a lot of litigation concern. Question therefore is to Mr. Lakshmikumaran. Therefore, we have, in terms of the tax collections, the disputed tax is about 10,57,000 crores. 10,57,000 crores, and which the government also believes that out of this 10,57,000 crores, somewhere around 3 to 4% only we have the confidence of collecting. The balance we don't have the confidence of collecting. We have therefore, in terms of the 4,10,000 crores is in 13-14 was the disputed tax. It's gone up to 10,57,000 crores in 2021, more than double, 2.5 times has gone in terms of disputed tax. Question therefore is, why is this disputed tax going up? Therefore, the question is there a tax terrorism involved? The government therefore talking about simplifying law, but in actual reality, in actual implementation, is there a tax terrorism in evidence? If you look into the various amendments made, we saw that there was hardly anything. But if you go into the detailing of the finance bill, there are 80 plus amendments, and therefore why is the government tinkering with minor ratios? So what he is making as a speech is different from what are the contents, what the devils are in the details in the finance bill concern. And therefore the question to Lakshmikumaran is his impressions about, as experience as a lawyer concerned, handling litigation for so many years now, up to the top court, Supreme Court level. What does he believe to be the attitude? Is there a tax terrorism that's continuing? And is there something, therefore, the government is always tinkering with the law? We don't have some sort of a stoppage to this. We don't have a sort of a long-term fiscal policy. Therefore, your comments on this matter, sir.
Thank you. Very interesting questions. We must define what is tax terrorism first. We must understand a tax officer without having power to punish the tax dodgers is like a paper tiger. The courts have repeatedly said the powers of parliament is necessary for the efficient tax collection. Up to this point, no problem. As far as scrutinizing the returns file, getting the information, insider clovers, or discontinued employees, competitors, they do provide valuable information to the department. And they also get the information from other sister departments like income tax department getting from the indirect taxes, from banks, various things. So the government is sitting on a huge amount of information, and definitely that information, if it is properly analyzed, we could find a whole lot of holes where the tax is not being paid properly. If a legitimate tax is not paid by your neighbor, you are paying for him unnecessarily. What we are talking about, the tax terrorism, is not about finding out the people who are not paid the taxes or tax dodgers. What we are saying is the way you conduct investigation, the way you call the people for summoning and then recording the statements, asking them to stay back late night and then recording their statements and then don't give the copy to them, and then compelling them to make the payment immediately, that I would call as a tax risk. You have every power to go and investigate. every power to go and ask for information, collect the data, but follow the due process of law. If you do so, then there is no tax terrorism. If there's overzealousness of the tax officers at the time of investigation, where they want to collect the tax immediately by hook or crook, by arm twisting, etc., that is bad. So whether the government is doing enough to unearth all those tax dodgers, I would say not enough. Are they doing enough to reduce tax terrorism? No. In fact, that is increased. So therefore, what is necessary is the training to the tax officers as to what they should do and how they should respect the rule of law. You determine, you find out, you investigate, issue the notice, follow the due process, collect the tax, then nobody complains. But when you do anything shortcut in between, that's bad. That's what I would say, Tarek. But there is so much unearthed, and the government is not doing that much as far as the unearthing the unpaid taxes.
Despite the tax officers wanting to do a good assessment, are they not therefore compelled to do because of the target-driven assessment? The target-driven high-pitched demands are created, and thereafter those are therefore left in lurch for in terms of litigation concern. And this is type of a high assessment, high-pitched demand without an accountability on part of the tax officer. That's the reason we're talking about tax terrorism, action without accountability.
You are right. You are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. We will look at this way. I mean, I do have experience in handling matters other countries also. If a country, say Europe or in the US, if the tax officer issues a letter stating that we want to come and audit your accounts and see whether you have paid the tax correctly or not, and they give 3 months time for them to fix the dates and all this. The companies do employ the lawyers or the accountants, auditors to do their internal check whether anything is wrong, etc. And they come back and then say, hey, I have short paid about 11 million euros. Here is the money. These are the things which we found on our own. Here it is. And the officers, they come, they look at it, and they find out 5 points. You are already been reported by this on self-declaration. They say, thank you very much. On the remaining 3, we feel that we have paid less tax to the tune of $8 million or euros. Kasasi, along with his lawyers, sit down and discuss across the table and then convince them. No, sir, what you're saying is not correct. The law is like this, law is like this, etc. It is not $8 million, it is $0.5 million. Here is the money checked, I am paying the amount, matter closed. Shake hand, gone. Do you think like this can happen in India? And unless it happens, I'm telling you, the litigation which is going on, the way the system getting clogged in the entire thing, like the tribunal, high courts, and Supreme Court, will continue. What I see, what I feel is that systemic changes in the attitude and the way in which how to treat a honest taxpayer in the with the respective demands. That is not happening. And problem here is, as Mr. Krishnan pointed out, as far as these issues are concerned, the officers, while having their own targets, and apart from this, there are also rewards. If you have found out some big things, there is a reward. So what happens is you become uncompromising. You don't see the other viewpoint. You don't even see what exactly the courts have said. I think I am right, and therefore I want to continue. So this attitude only increases and nobody at the commissioner's level, when they pass an adjudication order, they take a realistic view as a impartial view. Is always erring inside of the revenue. And matter go to the tribunal to the high court to the Supreme Court. According to me, more than 90% of the cases should not have been before the tribunal. They should have been dropped at the commissioner's level. More than 90% of the cases. But we are living in a world where the number of cases are increasing, repeated appeals, remanded, again go back. And if today, because of the system, if a matter is now litigated today, God knows when will it happen, final decision of the Supreme Court, 10 years, 15 years, etc. I am not able to answer any investor in India when they come and say, sir, this litigation take place, your opinion is sound, very good, fine, etc. If the litigation take place, how long will it take? Sir, I think you should ask an astrologer. At the end of the street, there is a good astrologer. He'll be able to tell you what year they can. I can't answer this. This is the world we are living in. We are not able to hear your question.
One of the important aspects of the net tax proposal this year, which you have kept separately, is the taxation of cryptocurrencies and the virtual digital asset. What we'll look at the finance minister saying that, and we'll have your reactions again, Lakshmikumaran, on this matter. Finance minister's speech on virtual digital assets.
Yeah.
Of virtual digital assets. There has been a phenomenal increase in transaction in virtual digital assets. The magnitude and frequency of these transactions have made it imperative to provide for a specific tax regime. Accordingly, for the taxation of virtual digital assets, I propose to provide that any income from transfer of any virtual digital asset shall be taxed at the rate of 30%, 30%. No deduction in respect of any expenditure or allowance shall be allowed while computing income except cost of acquisition. Further, loss from transfer of virtual digital asset cannot be set off against any other income. Further, in order to capture the transaction details, I also propose to provide for TDS on payment made in relation to transfer of virtual digital asset at the rate of 1% of such consideration above a monetary threshold. Gift of virtual digital asset is also proposed to be taxed in the hands of the recipient.
One of the most controversial or possibly highly debated topic is the aspect of this taxation, what we call as bitcoins or cryptocurrencies. And this is also giving some contrasting signal because the government was trying to introduce a bill to say that this is going to be an illegal activity per se. Nothing happened. The bill has not reached the parliament. But today the question therefore is that the proposal in the direct tax now to say that I'm going to tax this income at 30%. Does it legitimize this digital tax? One aspect of the transaction concern. Question now is therefore we're going to have this taxation 30%. We're going to have a TDS as 1%. Digital currency is given as a gift to somebody who is not a relative of yours, is going to be taxed in the hands of the person receiving that digital currency. So therefore, is this some sort of a measure that is to be accepted, or is it going to be something that's going to be a detriment, or that's going to be a killing of the crypto transactions? One. Two, the proposal is also just one confined to income tax. I would like to also have your proposals or your reactions on the indirect tax implications on this transactions in digital assets.
Thank you. We must understand the difference between a currency of a country and currency of other countries or I would say non-instruments other than currency. Currency of a country is a legal tender. I can give 1,000 rupee notes and then I can get goods. That's perfectly valid. Currency, other countries are always treated as goods in India. They're assets. In fact, if we unauthorizedly import $20,000 in currency notes, the customs can seize it as goods. In fact, the Custom Act also defined the goods as. So therefore, other than the currency in India, which is a legal tender, all other things are considered as assets. So therefore, these cryptocurrencies do not have the status of an Indian currency. In fact, government has also announced that Indian rupee itself going to be digitized. So that digital currency is going to come separate. That is legal tender. So as far as these goods, these items are concerned, they consider assets. By selling the assets, whatever capital gains you are going to get, that has to be taxed. That's the proposal of 30%. Question is whether the taxation of this, is it legitimization of the cryptocurrency transactions themselves or not? It's $1 million question. The regulation which has to come, how to regulate these cryptocurrencies has not yet come. You are right, absolutely, it does not reach the parliament. This, I would not say a legitimization of the activities. It would amount to recognition of an activity. The government has taken cognizance of the enormous amount of transactions that are taking place in cryptocurrencies. Whether ultimately legitimate or not, we'll see later. As far as any capital gain arising out of this particular transaction, I want to tax. And it happened in the past. There are many activities that are not legitimate, but the profits are always taxed. Well, smuggling, for example, is not legitimate, but the profit out of this is definitely taxable. There's not a question on this. And there, the courts originally used to say that expenditure involved in smuggling is a expendable expenditure. The ultimate law being made says we can't do any abatement on this. So as far as this is concerned, the law is made 30% tax flat rate for these capital gains you must pay. And this loss, etc., I can't set off against anything else. That's fine. The more important thing which I am worried about is the levy of TDS. This is a very tricky issue. If I am going to buy or sell the cryptocurrencies, it is through the brokerage system, and I do not know who is the ultimate buyer of the particular currency. I don't have his PAN number. It may be in India, outside India, we do not know. So now, in a TDS thing, purpose is what? Purpose of TDS is the person receiving the money from me is supposed to gain
4th February
and it's taxable in India. That's what legitimate taxable activity is taking place in India. And therefore, in order to trace him, the TDS process, the whole process is brought in, so that you can identify the ultimate customer. Now, the customer is not identified at all, it's in thin air. So, if you are going to have a process of TDS system, if I do not know who is the ultimate person who is going to be the buyer, what PAN number I must indicate, etc., I do not know. If you are going to the stock broker and the stock broker name is to be put here, he is not the ultimate buyer. For him, it is stock in trade. It is not a stock in exchange. It is not a capital gain for him. So therefore, I am going to see a lot of problems as far as the TDS issues are concerned, and I think the government also will step back and then say something, do some differently, or they may say without the PAN number you put, then the whole purpose of TDS is gone, etc. So as far as your question whether it is legitimizing, my answer is yes and no. Recognition, yes. You are on mute.
Go to the indirect tax last video again to Lakshmikumaran itself. The finance minister's speech on the wonderful performance of GST.
5 p.m.
Landmark reform of independent India, showcasing the spirit of cooperative federalism. While aspirations were high, there were huge challenges too. These challenges were overcome deftly and painstakingly under the guidance and the oversight of the GST Council. We can now take pride in a fully IT-driven and progressive GST regime that has fulfilled the cherished dream of India as one market, one tax. There are still some challenges remaining, and we aspire to meet them in the coming year. The right balance between facilitation and enforcement has engendered significantly better compliance, and enforcement has engendered better compliance. GST revenues are buoyant despite the pandemic. I would bring in something which I've got to know this morning, not part of my speech, but worth putting in here for the knowledge of the Honorable House. I would like to bring to the notice of this House that the gross GST collections for the month of January 22 are rupees 1,40,986 crores, which is the highest since the inception of GST. This has been possible due to rapid economic growth recovery post-COVID. This has been possible due to the rapid economic recovery post-COVID, as well as various policy and administration undertaken by central and state administrations. Taxpayers deserve applause for this growth. Not only did they adapt to the changes, but enthusiastically contributed to the cost of paying taxes.
Wonderful performance in terms of GST, but then the GST amendment is not a part of the finance bill because they are now, the GST Council does this. So the only matter in the finance bill is in relation to customs duty largely. Customs duty administration of SCGS to be reformed. Capital goods, we're going to have certain phasing out of capital goods, customs duty on capital goods. They're going to have an exemption being removed out, moderate rate of 7.5% customs duty. Exemption on 350 items to be further phased out. Exemptions on advanced machinery not manufactured in India will continue. Customs duty rates to provide for a graded rate structure to facilitate domestic manufacturing of certain items concerned. Next slide would be a lot of industry specific proposals, for example, cut and polished diamonds. Next slide. Customs duty on certain chemicals going away. They wanted to have blended fuel coming about, therefore unblended fuel will have an additional differential excise duty. Going to be certain anti-dumping and CBD on stainless steel and other items concerned. With the background of the performance of the GST, next slide question for Mr. Lakshmikumaran is that are these reforms in GST good enough? Wonderful. Is the data and the tracking of the process concerned actually indirectly also helping the boosting of the direct tax collections concerned? Therefore, are we looking at a finance minister making us mention about 1,40,000 crores? What do you see as the trend in GST collections in future now? And are the taxpayers going to have, again, the question in terms of ease of doing business, how are the amendments you think visualize will help you in having the ease of both living and ease of doing business?
Okay. You mentioned about the various changes made in the customs. Then talk about the GST. Both are interlinked. The GST ultimate collection is on the goods manufactured and sold, supply here, and also services. The buoyancy in GST indicates that despite COVID situations, factories were working, service providers are working, lawyers are working, morning, noon, and night, arguing before the various tribunals and courts and the high courts and Supreme Court, and providing output services. And obviously, therefore, during the time, the buoyancy is increased. But more important thing is regarding the amendment made in the customs. And those things are far-reaching amendments when made. The government has now got into a situation whereby wherever they want to focus the encouragement of manufacturing of goods in India, they target those goods and then increase the custom duty on the finished goods and decrease the custom duty on the components or the raw materials. So therefore, it becomes cheaper for you to buy the raw material component parts, manufacture the finished goods in India and sell it. Therefore, value addition takes place in India. It is no longer economical for you to import the finished goods by the full custom duty. This they have brought in what called the phased manufacturing program. This year they have introduced as far as and they have said in the next years, digital watches, smart meters, and your other speakers, etc., will come under this particular category of phased manufacturing program. Next 3 years, this rate going to be like this, increase, and further it is further increase. So therefore, you better arrange yourself to manufacture the goods in India. So similarly, with regard to the project imports, where the rate of duty was 0 or 2.5% for very industries, capital goods basically imported are a lower rate of custom duties. In order to encourage the manufacturing in India for those very inputs, these rates are being phased out till we go to 2.5 to 5%, 1.5%. This will be a level playing field for the Indian manufacturers to produce those goods. So the reform that are being taking place as far as the customs are concerned is encouraging the manufacturing in India, Make in India program more and more sustainable. I have already seen in number of products where this particular thing has actually succeeded in the past, and they are now trying to do other goods also in this country. That value addition here, because of the custom duty structuring, translates into the higher collections of the GST also, because then the value addition is more and more here, the credit is less and less. And therefore, the manufacturing is taking place more. And of course, we must give the credit to all the industries and service providers that they are working day and night in spite of all this pandemic situation, and where the government can claim, I don't know, legitimately or otherwise, that they are responsible for the higher collections of GST.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we come to we want all three of the panelists to remain here just to answer yes or no. Next conclusion. Play the next slide. The conclusion slide. Yeah. Does the budget put us in a high growth path to meet the $5 trillion mark by 2026, $10 trillion mark by 2032? We need to grow at 12.5% nominal, keeping rupee dollars at 75 to meet this. But Vaidyanathan, don't go away. You be the first to answer, then you can go. Okay, Sharad? Yes. Sharad, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Lakshmikumaran?
It will happen even without the budget.
Prof. Vaidyanathan? Prof. Vaidyanathan?
No.
I think, he'll come back. He'll come back. He's kept the camera on. He's come back. He's gone for a very urgent matter. He's definitely come back. So I think we want to thank Dr. Soumya Ghosh, Sharad Sharma, Professor Vaidyanathan, and Mr. Lakshmikumaran for a very scintillating 3-hour budget discussion. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your brilliance. Thank you for your answers. I hope all of you enjoyed it. Over to the Institute for closing ceremonies. Professor Vaidyanathan, please answer this question, yes or no? Does the budget put us in a high growth path to meet 5 trillion by 2026 and 10 trillion by 2032? Professor Vaidyanathan? Yes or no?
This is a very, like a phone a friend and, call a friend type of yes or no answer will be very difficult. But anyhow, not easy to reach the target. Let me put it. I won't say no.
Thank you. I think the vote is 2:1. Lakshmikumaran said we'll reach it irrespective of budget. Sharad was very clear, yes. You are, saying yes, Pakla. So thank you very much to all the panelists. Over to the Institute.
Thank you very much. We had a fabulous session. Over to Divya to formally put a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear members, it's my privilege and I take this opportunity on behalf of Bangalore branch to present formal vote of thanks for today's program on analysis of Union Budget 2022. I would like to express my sincere thanks and also deep sense of gratitude for today's moderators, CATV Mohandas Pai, CAH Padamchand Khincha, panelist Professor R. Vaidyanathan, Mr. Sharad Sharma, also Mr. V. Lakshmikumaran, Dr. Soumya Ghosh. I would like to also thank other team members of today's program, Mr. Mayankyam, Mr. Ravi, Mr. Shibra, Ms. Ramani, Ms. Shweta, and also C.A. Krishnan. Once again, wholehearted thanks to each one of you for spending your valuable time and making this as an excellent program for today's. And also we must physical program we used to held every year. At least we expect this pandemic situation for this year should end and we conduct physical union budget analysis in the upcoming budget. Thank you all the participants also for active participation. Over to Chairman, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank
See
you,
you all.
folks. Thank you. See you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.